Please remember that we are on web streaming video. Make sure that when you speak, you do turn your microphones on, which means the red light needs to be on. You can certainly silence them when you're not speaking, but make sure the red light is on when you are speaking. As we're on video, please be aware, too, that you can be seen. And you want to make sure that you remember that as you're speaking as well, that you want to project so that you can be seen and heard on the video. I'll go ahead and I'll start, and we'll just head this way around the table. I'm Rebecca Lothringer, Executive Director from the University of North Texas, serving as Chair for the committee.
Jose Rios, Coordinating Board.
Cheryl Rich, Associate Director of Admissions, Texas A&M.
I'm Sarah Mason, and I'm Associate Director of Admissions at A&M Galveston.
I'm Kristen Reynolds from the Texas Education Agency.
Donna Carlin, Coordinating Board Staff.
Daryl Hendry, Executive Director of Admissions and Registrar at El Paso Community College.
Mary Gooch, Director of Admissions at Prairie View A&M University.
Tim Brace, I manage the technical team for ApplyTexas.
Ethan Logan, Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Texas Tech University.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jose Gallegos. I'm the Manager of Operations for the Office of Admissions for the University of Texas at El Paso.
Jana Chansey, Executive Director, Enrollment Management Services, Tyler Junior College.
Thank you, everyone. I do see we have a couple of more members that are getting situated. Would like to welcome Pat Ellison from UT Austin and Jeff Fuller from the University of Houston, who will be joining us on screen soon. Moving right into our agenda. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the last meeting. Did everyone have a chance to read those minutes that were provided to us online earlier?
I move we accept the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Continuing on the agenda, we're going to go into the old business section next. We're shifting. Okay, we have shifted. The first item I know of old business we would like to discuss is we'd like to welcome Donna back to our meeting, where she is here. As you might remember, she came to our very first meeting when we had a long discussion about meningitis. She's back today to discuss meningitis with us. Any concerns, any old business, anything that needs to be brought up? Donna, anything you'd like to add?
I'm sure all of you are aware that this new legislation and the rules begin on January 1st. I've had, many calls as the schools are ramping up to, begin this. I guess I'll mention that we do plan to take to the April board meeting a request for a slight revision to the rules, and that will be to take out the requirement that students that want to file a conscientious objection form have to use the form from the Department of State Health Services. In that way, it would free us up to be able to put a form on our website that's downloadable, and it'll just make the process a little bit easier. So unfortunately, that won't happen for January, so students will still need to use that process. So that's the plan anyway. So I wanted to...
Don't have to use the form on...
Well, they still... Currently, the rules say that they have to get the form from the Department of State Health Services must be used. And so that process for January will still be in effect, because the soonest that we can request this, because of the time frame in which our materials have to be developed and submitted for internal approval, we won't make it for the January board meeting, and we will not be able to make that revision or propose that revision, I should say, until April. So, and then the board would vote on it. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to, I'm pretty sure y'all are familiar with this legislation, so I don't want to go back and rehash old things. But if there's any burning questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
I just have a question. I know there's been some activity and discussion on the TACRA listserv about acceptable forms for documentation, and the rules from CB kind of pretty much outline that.
Right.
I'm wondering at what point, and maybe even for the first semester or the spring at least, are these expected to be audited by CB, their documentation?
No, there is no oversight provided in the legislation or the rules. So the, institutions of higher ed are expected to follow with the rules, the guidance in the rules, and have a process in place for that. But we don't have any type of oversight.
And let me just add kudos for the suggestion and the recommendation for the change on the state health form, because as we all know, it's such a nightmare.
Yeah.
We have not had as many students requesting that. And what we've actually found is the more students realize that it's a longer process, they actually just go get the shot. We provide it in our health center, but I think the impression is that it's an easy process. And then once they realize that they have to actually request, and it takes a long period of time to get the form before they can actually do anything with it. They want to move on to enrollment, and they can't. At least in our campus, we block enrollment until that happens. So.
Yep. It's not worth the hassle.
Right, which, we may have more students than if this is accepted. We might have more students that file the conscientious objection form as a result of making the process.
One of the things, and it just hit me, we don't get a lot of students coming to us as freshmen. We'll have a lot of transfer students. In the spring, we have about 2,500 transfer students in the spring. But we've had a couple of high school students who've graduated or who are graduating early and have provided their shot record from high school. And they're basically coming to us with the shot record from their individual, what they're getting from their high school environment. Mm-hmm. It does not have some of the information like where the shot was performed and the name of the doctor or the physician that performed it. So we are not accepting those, or in fact, we're denying those because the students don't have that. And so I'm wondering so we're having to message students and tell them, if you're providing a shot record from your high school, you may want to rethink that because it's not going to be sufficient. And I'm just wondering, it's not probably going to be an issue for most institutions right now, but it will be in May, June, July, when all these high school students think that their shot records will be sufficient, and especially because most of them get this in grade 7, and it's good for 5 years. So they're all going to have to be re-inoculated, if you will. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of message that we could either just send to TEA or even just send through the ESCs, just to make sure the high school folks are aware of this, and most importantly, so that the students don't kind of get surprised by this, because we can message to them individually, but if I think many folks are approaching this, I think it may be helpful, because what we're seeing is a lot of times this is not a stop for admissions, but it's a stop in enrollment, which can prevent them from being able to move on and progress through the enrollment process, which can be a little frustrating, and they may just give up.
Well, do you know if there is I'm sure there's a mechanism that TEA communicates with the ISDs or maybe with the counselors?
Sure. I think that if you make a request of us to send maybe a to the administrator address letter or work through our health and safety office, I think that we can talk about how best to do that.
Okay. We can certainly follow up on that.
Other discussion for Donna? Okay. Thank you very much for being here.
You
are. Pilar, I'm going to ask, and I know you just got settled, but I'm going to ask you to move up to where Donna was so that we'll have you both on video and with the microphone. Pilar Janis is here from the Brownsville ISD, and we're having her move up to the table. Any other old business from prior meetings that we need to bring up at this time? Hearing none, I'm going to move forward to the subcommittee updates. beginning with the high school counselor suite. And I will tell you now that I don't know exactly who the chairs are for each one of these, but I'm thinking Jeff is the chair of this one.
Yes, and there's no update on this right now. We're still working on questions with a couple high school counselors to try and glean sort of usage, and so we should have that in the spring at some point.
Thank you, Jeff. Dual credit application. Any updates from anyone working on the dual credit? That's what we were talking about yesterday, wasn't it? Okay. Yeah, then that committee was not able to get together. So, okay, no updates on that one yet. The FAFSA testing and TASFA subcommittee, I am actually chairing that one. We did have a chance to meet yesterday. Tim, you'll be very interested in this because we are going to be proposing a API for FAFSA and what we believe will be a much easier addition for TASFA to be considered in the next cycle. I'm thinking we'll go ahead and add that. It's on the list for later, isn't that right, Jose? So we don't talk about it now. But we did have a very nice meeting yesterday, and with the TASFA, we're looking at, I'm sorry, let me pull up in my notes and make sure I remember exactly. I think with the TASFA, what we were looking at was a link that would act much like the affidavit link, so that a student that would actually be eligible to complete the TASFA would see the link that would allow them to pre-populate the TASFA, like the affidavit that is currently set. So we're hoping that as you can start to think about that, we hope that that's not a very difficult one because we already have something in place much like that right now with the affidavit. With the FAFSA, it is going to take more work. It will be an API. So you're going to have to, we'd like to move this onto the suggestions for the next cycle, but you'll have to think through the kind of hours, and I'm sorry to have you think through them quickly. We just met yesterday. We know that there is a link with a federal contact that we're going to have to make. The coordinating board, Jose, mentioned that they think they do have this contact person at the federal level that should be able to help us with this kind of idea. And again, the idea is the students will complete the ApplyTexas application, and duplicate information could then be moved over to their FAFSA application as well, so they wouldn't have to do two twice. The IRS populating a FAFSA is already working, so there is an API already in existence somewhere. We're hoping that we can kind of mirror that for this group for FAFSA. And then with testing, what we were talking about with the testing was integrating SAT and ACT so that test scores will actually be affiliated with their application. Again, this is something that we talked about a couple of years ago when we ran into some difficulties. As we went back and thought about it, we think some of the difficulties that we had before was that we didn't have a partnership with the testing agencies. We feel like now that partnership might exist. Based on some contacts that the coordinating board has made since we last talked about this. So for our next steps for this, this is not something we're going to be able to move into the next cycle. But over the next year, we would like to investigate the different possibilities to integrate this. There's some ideas where perhaps the coordinating board actually becomes the owner of the data, because some of the discussion prior was that the testing agencies own the data, and then if we all have access just to pick and choose through the data, that kind of takes away from their and the student's ability to say they own the data. But if the coordinating board brings in the data into a database that then links with the application, we think that might move us past that concern. We think that Florida may already be doing this, so we're going to look into what Florida is doing, because if they're already doing it, we might be able to model after them. Then we need to also, I remember some discussion previously that there was a concern about, from one of the testing agencies, about the fact that this is a cost to them, and we were talking about trying to get that with no cost. So we're going to have to look into estimates on price, if any, from the testing agencies. Because of the additional research, it won't be available until the fall 2014 cycle, which would open August 1st of 2013. Next year's seniors. This is the next year's seniors. But anyway, so we want to give you an update on that. But that's clear now, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. we wanted to give you an update on that. So this is not something we're proposing for the next year cycle, but to let you know where we are with it. And it is something that we hope to see in the next couple of years. We'll be on an application, but there's definitely more research needed there.
Becky, this came up, I know, I'm going back to the days when Bruce Walker was on the committee, and Bruce did some of the initial work. University of South Florida, Pat Grossman is sort of been the person who's championed this within Florida, and both the College Board and ACT in Florida allow for that right now. I know that when we had this discussion, however long ago it was, Bruce invited some of the Ann Wright, who was then the Vice President, Southwest Regional Vice President for College Board here to the meeting, and her counterpart with ACT, and they both agreed to do this. I believe both of those organizations have new leadership now.
Right.
So we probably need to reconnect with them and have that conversation. But I do know that this is happening in Florida, and it was at least an opportunity for us to point to an organization or a state, if you will, that's already doing this, and look at not having to reinvent the wheel.
Excellent, thank you. That will help us too as we look forward to mirroring. T-Rex subcommittee?
We had a great conference call. Was that last week, I believe? Yes. And we had folks from TEA on the call. A couple folks from ApplyTexas were there, and a couple high school counselors. Pilar, thanks again, and then Jeff Pilchek joined us. I think it was a great conversation. And I think what most importantly what it did was really begin to sort of not just look at this from a technical side, but also on the functional side. We had an opportunity to talk with folks from TEA about the fact that when high schools upload their T-Rex or their documents into T-Rex, there's not a mechanism in place to then notify the institutions or the high school or the universities if certain documents don't get transmitted. Again, I'll mention, if you're on the TAG listserv, you know there's been much activity in the past couple weeks about some changes that have been happening within T-Rex. We had asked the folks to take a look and seeing if there's a mechanism in place. We could put a mechanism in place so that when, if on a daily upload, say 10,000 transcripts get uploaded to colleges and universities, if 10,000 transcripts don't get sent, to have some sort of error reporting, if you will. And Glenn Shelton came back, and they were already working on some upgrades and some patches to T-Rex. And Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like they've put something like that into place now. So just since our call, or since the call, he talked to the programming folks, and that's now a function that exists within T-Rex since our call. So kudos to ApplyTexas for championing that, because I think it does impact the opportunity for schools to make sure that if they're uploading transcripts, that those are or are not being sent. And it's really a situation, something is happening in the transmission from T-Rex to Speedy that's not necessarily connecting, that T-Rex folks will then take a look at it and then identify what the issue may be, fix that, and then move those transcripts on. So those transcripts are not lost, if you will. They do get that. It just may be on some sort of delay.
They had no audit trail right there. They didn't have an audit to check to see if incoming equaled outgoing.
Yeah.
We were like, it has to be. You have to have that count to know.
So that was the main thing.
Right away.
And since the call, I don't even think it came up. It actually did come up. I think Pilar mentioned it, the issue about TSI scores, tax scores.
I was going to mention that.
Tax scores, and there is an opportunity now for those scores to be uploaded and sent from this high school to the receiving institution. Keep in mind, it only works if the high school has it programmed in their data set to extract it, upload it, and then, because if it's there, Speedy will send it. If the high school does not upload it into the T-Rex environment, Speedy has nothing to capture and then send.
So we're really reliant on the high schools to make sure that when they upload the transcript information that it includes that tax information.
Can I ask a question, though? Last week we had a counselor meeting, and one of our counselors mentioned that the essay score was still not posting, and that she's having to turn around and still make copies of those to send to the school for TSI. Does anybody? I don't use it, so the registrar and the counselor mentioned it, and I know this was talked about earlier in the spring with the high school counselors, that was one of their frustrations, that the schools, the colleges wouldn't take it without the essay score, which is a requirement.
Jeff sent an email that once that testing portal became available, he was able to transmit. And so probably all the information is that just started, what was that, last week? Is that what he said?
I think end of last week is when they made that upload,
new.
yeah.
But I think that each district has challenges. We're still having challenges with T-Rex. And before that, the conference call that we had, I polled different people in charge of records, because in some schools it's the counselor that takes a more active role, in some schools it's the record person, and each school had different issues and challenges, and what I noticed is not everyone had the same information. Like one record room didn't know that you could not attach, that if you send a T-Rex with an attachment to a higher ed, it's not going to go through, because she could do it within the districts to other districts, but not to higher ed. Yet the other schools knew that. So just sometimes even the miscommunications, but we are working on our challenges as we go to even a new system that's going to have to adapt to T-Rex. We're going to a new system next year. So, but it was hopeful that I saw that, Westlake was able to do it successfully, so I'm sure that it's a potential for everyone. We can go there.
So the good thing about it is, hopefully when, if you're getting transcripts at your institutions from last week through the future, you should have that information in your systems. I think the key thing is to make sure that each of us go back and then test if you're receiving that, how is it coming in? And my hope is that it's coming in the same way that it's loaded through the regular speedy import process but it may not be. So just it's important to take a look at that and make sure that you have a way to make sure that it maps to your place in your own information system. So that was really the first issue was the most important issue that we wanted to talk about, and it seems like that's gotten resolved. We do know that there's been some activity over the past couple of weeks with T-Rex and Speedy, and it appears to be resolved. But so far, so good. We'll continue to see how that goes. But I think the most important thing is that the folks from TEA were extremely understanding of the situation, and we use that also as an opportunity to help educate them on, specifically for your college side, about some of the issues as it relates to making sure if there's specific deadlines that institutions have that students are missing out on. So hopefully it should not be an issue, but we'll continue to monitor that and then
Jeff, I have a question. Was the issue of the T-Rex only having the exit level test scores discussed? Because at the college level, we have the problem for dual credit and early college high school students, because when we receive those T-Rex transcripts for the 10th graders applying to go into dual credit in the 11th grade, when that T-Rex comes through, the tax scores have a null value in there, because looking at it, it appears that the software for T-Rex only picks up the exit level test scores, and we need the 10th grade
and
scores.
And that may also be how the school has their data import to pull and then send. Again, it's not an issue necessarily with Speedy sending it. It's a situation where either the high school does not have that as one of the data elements that they extract to upload into T-Rex, or they're just not doing that. So, but Gerald, we did also talk about, because it came up as a question from one of the counselors, from Jeff Pilchuk from Westlake, about end of subject tests, and we recognized that TA is still working on that, so there's no real, because we were concerned about what's going to happen when tax goes away and what's going to be the mechanism in place to identify that, and it seems like there's not a common finality with that, at least from our understanding. But I think what may be beneficial is to connect with ISDs or campuses that you typically tend to get a large number of dual credit from, and see first off if they're using TREX, and secondly if that's an opportunity for them if they are importing the non-final or exit level tax, and if there's an opportunity for them to submit. And it may also be a situation where Speedy only allows a final. So I think that's an opportunity for some discussion to be had from the, especially for dual credit and early college students from the 10th grade or so on, specifically as you upload them in.
We've looked at what the high schools actually put in, and we've obtained copies of their printout from what they put into TREX and they transmit. And for example, it has all their tax history and what they actually load into TREX. But what we receive on our end is a null value because they don't have an exit score. And so that's what TREX is sending across. And when we talk to the Region 19, they explained to us that that's a vendor issue because that's the way TREX is designed. It only transmits to us the exit score because by state law, that's all that they have to provide to higher education is the exit score. And so it doesn't even pick up from, the exit score is in a different field than the rest of the test history.
But honestly, TREX, the legislation didn't just get put into practice for high school to college, but it's also there for high school to high school. So the data element has to be there to be able, in my mind, to be able to send from high school A to high school B.
It does.
Specifically if you're looking for that non-exit level tax scores. So it sounds to me either it's not a TREX issue, it may be a Speedy issue, meaning there's not a place in Speedy to allow for a non-exit level tax scores to be uploaded there. So let me see if we can connect and find out if that's a possibility, because Speedy only may be looking for final exit level scores to transmit, and since the mechanism, if you will, is the Speedy mechanism to send those to colleges, universities, that may be where there's sort of an opportunity to connect that.
Thank you.
The other thing that I guess in thinking, the records rooms are going to continue to send, even though the testing portal exists and they're able, like Jeff's school was able to send it complete. I don't think that the people, at least in our district, most of them are the person in charge of records, knows that, for example, a private college will accept an SAT or an ACT off the back of a transcript versus the flagship schools are going to want it, or most schools will want it directly from College Board. And so I think that it's hard for them to know, and they're going to continue to want to send that back because they're scared to do something wrong. Okay, if they don't know that, maybe A&M won't take it. They need it, and they're just going to try to send it because they'll feel like, okay, if I keep it back, they don't know that, okay, St. Mary's is going to take it off the back of that transcript, and, most private colleges will. So I don't, that issue. Some of the schools take that. Some of the colleges will take it off the back. Mm-hmm.
Some will, some won't.
Some will and some won't. Huh? We still take it off. So no, but the student still has to send it through the College Board.
We want it from.
Okay. Because I don't think that's really clear because the students feel like they have to, and they'll.
No.
Okay.
That's the same thing.
We make them have
Sorry. There's a chance of it being misread, mistyped, miss something else. But if it's on an official transcript and it's written, by your people on the back of your transcript, then it's official in our.
In your eyes, because it goes
it's on an
direct.
official transcript.
But
It's an
Pilar,
official
and
score.
let me also mention, and I guess because I'm going to probably hear laughs when I say this, because I'm old and I've been doing this for a while now, we're seeing fewer and fewer and fewer test scores on transcripts.
Yes, and we're glad.
Most of the times when we see a transcript, it is the AAR. It is, and it actually says academic achievement record, and that's what they're providing us, and that's the transcript. So I think a lot of institutions have not moved to a way of saying we don't accept them from the transcript. It's just a lot of times they're not on the transcript,
Right.
which is why we have to then say, and I don't know, there may be institutions that accept a score report. Some of us don't. And so if it's not on the transcript, the old label, if you will, that the registrar counselor put on, and it's not entered in some way that the transcript then, when it sends the AAR, has the test scores on there, then the student's having to send them electronically.
They're still posting, the actual labels. There's, 2 sides to the card, and usually it just depends on where they put the label. So, but I'm just saying that it would be good once we fix the SAT and ACT, because then you'll have it complete, versus you've got the testing portal, you've got, a way to transmit, but you still have some people that will send a paper, to show the SAT or ACT. So it'll be good once we move to everything, and then it'll be all complete. I think that'll be good.
Madam Chair, that's all for our report from T-Rex.
The next subcommittee was the subcommittee on student correspondence.
I think I may be the only person who represents that subcommittee who's here, and
Great.
I'm not quite sure, but this subcommittee was unable to meet prior to this meeting.
Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate that. The next subcommittee report from Graduate and International.
Yes, we got lots of response back from people across the state. Thank you all for nudging. And we've made changes or suggestions for changes to the next cycle.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And the final report from the subcommittees will be the report on the scholarship subcommittee, which I know we were able to meet yesterday, and some of us, actually there were several of us that met yesterday, whether we were on the subcommittee or not. We just happened to be here and on the phone, and I appreciate all of you sitting in even when you weren't actually on the subcommittees. This particular one, yesterday the topic was specific in nature to the change that was requested to us through Texas A&M based on an NCAA ruling that had just come forth in November. That was our discussion yesterday. Cheryl, did you want to?
No.
Okay. Basically, the conversation was about the application, the ApplyTexas application right now in the extracurricular activities section, and although we didn't bring it up yesterday, also in the awards section has a example. We offer examples for the students to use as they're filling out those sections. Well, in the extracurricular activities and in the awards section, one of the examples in each one of those sections specifically refers to the students' participation on a basketball team. In the awards section, the example is being an all-state captain on the basketball team. NCAA's ruling that came down in November that A&M brought to our attention was that if a school, a university, or college specifically requests that a student list their participation in an athletic sport during their high school career, it could jeopardize the ability to award that student a scholarship based on the fact that admissions and/or scholarship may have been awarded because the student was told to tell us about their athletic participation. A lot of discussion ensued. That will not be necessarily repeated here. Further discussion ensued later last night as I made phone calls back to my particular campus. But the as I had a chance to think about it last night, and I think that the committee also agreed, based on this ruling, regardless of how we feel about the ruling, it would be in the best interest of the committee to consider changing the example so that we do not have to worry about this being an issue at any point in time that the NCAA might decide to broach it with one of their institutions, specifically Division I institutions would be the most at risk. The representative that was nice enough to come on board, come on to the phone call with us from A&M, their compliance officer, our two compliance officers came on to try to help explain this to us and suggested that it could be as easy, the change could be as easy as making it say something about team instead of a sport. Just talk about including your participation with teams and other organizations. I also went online and looked at what the common application list and brought that up to the committee, which I think I still have it here, but probably not.
Rebecca, I think your example you gave us yesterday was participation in a team, a club, or other such activity.
Right. Thank you. And then I'll have to see if I can find it again. A common application listed a little bit separately or a little bit differently in they don't provide an actual example. Pilar was with us on the phone yesterday. She stepped out at this moment, but she mentioned that she felt the examples really did help the students in understanding what we're asking them to include. The common application does not list an example, but instead, amongst other wording, asks the students to please use the space provided, to use the space available to provide details of your activities and accomplishments, and then in parentheses, specific events, varsity letter, musical instrument, employer, etc. And so that was some other wording that we discussed yesterday, was something about varsity letters, which does not just include athletics.
That's right.
But it is like an award, but it would, in the mind of a lot of students, help them understand that you can list sports. Pilar mentioned when we were talking that she was concerned, and some of our concern was that students wouldn't understand that it's okay to list sports, and the NCAA is okay if the students elect to list sport participation. We just cannot specifically ask for sports participation. Right. So either the wording, say the wording again, Ethan, from yesterday.
I think the compromise that we were interested in was to use the terminology such as participation in a team, club, or other innocuous generic terms such as that.
Without using the word innocuous generic term.
I don't think we should use innocuous or all list their shot record.
That does sound like meningitis. We've already talked about meningitis. We're moving on from that. So this, I was looking quickly, Jose, this specifically the change in this wording I didn't see listed in our suggestions for later, but I could add it with the scholarship application here. Mm-hmm. So this will be a discussion on a potential change for the next cycle that's actually sounds like a necessary change for the next cycle, but we will bring that up again later. That's what we spent yesterday talking about with scholarships on that subcommittee.
I'd like to make one more comment, other than a dissenting comment. I won't make that today. I would question whether or not just the change of the question or the example on the application. I appreciate our interests in trying to make sure that we're compliant with a statement from the NC2A organization about applications and refraining from attaching student candidacy for admission or for scholarships based upon their sports participation. But I would also question about whether or not if a student elects to provide that voluntarily, does that also not meet that criteria threshold that the NC2A may have put forward in their statement? If a student is providing that information to us, then that also would be a question about whether or not that's influencing decisions. And so I would think that we perhaps should seek some further clarification from the NC2A on this piece.
The second person on that call yesterday was the legal NCAA guy.
From A&M.
He didn't offer any commentary about that when we when we were mentioning those points. He didn't offer any negative commentary, and when we mentioned that, they're still going to put those examples down. He didn't say anything there, so I mean, I can bring that up to him.
In the ruling that they were reading to us yesterday, do you have that wording?
I think I was looking for that in my notes.
If I remember, and I understand what you're saying, Ethan, and I tend to agree. What difference does it make whether or not the student is prompted or puts it there voluntarily? And we weren't meaning to prompt; we were giving examples, such as. But we do know that athletics takes a huge portion of a student's time, which was one of the reasons why we listed that, because we're using this as one of the 18 additional factors for admissions decisions, as we are required to by the state. And we do look at extracurricular activities and what else the student may be involved in that might have kept them from perhaps being a straight A student. Anyway, that's our reason to have it on there, and athletics is a huge portion of their time. If I remember, do you have the wording? If I remember right from the wording, even the ruling said something in there about if the student provides it on their own, that NCAA is fine with that. If I remember the ruling correctly, but I also haven't read it.
I have it somewhere.
So maybe Cheryl can, if she locates that, we can use that with discussion. But I thought the same thing through last night. I did spend some time thinking about this last night, and it's err on the side of being cautious or
Admissions, though, or err on the side of caution for scholastic or for scholarship?
It's the same thing because we use.
No, it's not.
No, it is. We use the same module.
We use the same module, but we're not being told we have to make our admissions decisions on whether somebody has potential to be an athlete or not.
No,
that sounds like admission on the basis of ethnicity, and we've never been.
No, in that ruling, it specifically did mention scholarship and or admissions decisions, though, and since that same module and the same wording shows up in both, because they did. I remember your compliance officer mentioned that the ruling mentioned admissions as well. So it.
But picture admissions committees. We've never been.
It's not that we do, because none of us do.
Yeah, that's not
base admission on that, but it's the
perception
that we could, because we now have this information, and according to NCAA, via the example, we have asked them to give us that information.
But then we're not asking them.
No, we're not.
Okay,
I agree.
There's the pulling out of that. We're not asking them. If we're showing that we're not asking them, I'm going to go back and I'm trying to still find this, and it may be back with the other notes, and I'll go back and ask him that. But if we're showing that we're not asking them that, but they've provided it, they've been providing it all along.
If they provide it without our example, is their argument?
I would contend that if we ask or if we provide an example that is in reference to student athletic participation, which may be a significant portion of the student population, not a majority, but I'd say 20% at least, versus if we do not ask that question or do not provide that example, but a student provides that as an example of their extracurricular participation, there is no difference.
I agree. I agree. I see completely what you're saying. As I thought about it last night, it comes down, and this is not law, of course, but it comes down to letter of the law. When we are given a law, you follow that law to the best of your ability. So in this case, this is a suggestion, and it's like dealing with an attorney. If NCAA decides to come after the University of North Texas, well, we are Division I, although we're just a very small, little, insignificant in Division I. We're working on it. But let's say they do decide to come to North Texas, and they look at us and they say, we see this admissions application for this particular student, and we're investigating the team, and they've listed football.
Got to find this.
NCAA isn't going to care that we didn't use it for admissions. Yeah. They're going to see that it was on the admissions application.
This is a new law.
This is a new interpretation. If we take it off and the student suggests it, or the student puts it out there, I think the university is safe. Yeah. We didn't ask for it. Right. Mm-hmm. According to this ruling, until they change this ruling and come forward with something else, I think we have done the best we could to meet their ruling. If a student suggests it, we can't keep a student from entering information. It's just like when a student falsifies an application and comes back and tells you later, I didn't list that transcript, and so then we deny admission based on that.
Rebecca, I agree with your assessment, and I support what you're saying, that it's an application of policy compliance. And I have no problem with that, and I would recommend that the committee go forward with complying with policy, even if it's not our policy, but an associated entity. My question is it's now just a parlay of semantics by saying that it is not specifically a contributed example by ApplyTexas, but it's the content which is supplied.
Right.
And that, therefore, there is no difference in an example of participation in an extracurricular activity, which is a sporting event or activity, and whether or not a student provides that voluntarily.
Right.
The same argument or concern can be raised on whether or not a decision made for application to an institution or the recipient of a scholarship could have had preferential treatment because of the fact that they provided this material.
I agree.
So to me, it makes no difference whether or not that's an example.
So are we covered if we say, do not provide any information? Are we better off doing that?
That's the point. We're getting to the point where we would say, please provide examples of extracurricular activity unless it was a sporting event.
Right. Of anything except.
And the philosophical component which I bring forward is the fact that we make decisions about admissions for students to public institutions of higher education based on a variety of factors. First and foremost, their academic qualification.
Yes.
But there are discriminating factors which we can look at after that application. If they are marginal in application of academic achievement, there is still educational benefit for us to enroll students to our population based on a variety of different factors, based upon the types of activities and experiences, leadership, or other opportunities that they've had in their lives which come and enrich our communities. One way that a student can participate co-curricularly in their high school experience is through student varsity athletics.
You're preaching to the choir.
Which could be, in and of itself, a significant portion of their time outside of the classroom, evening practices, weekend events, that would prohibit them from being involved in community service or perhaps other clubs and events, simply due to time constraint. And so now we're going to eliminate that as a possible consideration of a student's profile because it could be construed as insignificantly or significantly contributing to the fact that they could have been admitted simply for the fact that they were an athlete, or that they may have received a scholarship institutionally because they're an athlete. I think that the athletic scholarship importance is based upon athletic scholarships which are given by athletic departments and not by an institution.
Not at all, right.
At least, I don't know if they're always the same. I think athletic scholarships probably, if you're going to choose, would be a better scholarship than some of the institutional scholarships we can provide. But that's my point. I'm happy to recommend the change to the application. I just believe that it is misconstrued or maybe a little off-center in terms of the fact that we're focused on the ApplyTexas application. Thank you for your time.
Can I have the soapbox
And
back?
And
Make a motion to change.
the other issue I thought about last night was if by making this change, we look like we are saying, yes, that's what we were doing. And I will like to say on record that in no way are we using this information for admissions decisions.
No.
That was never the intention. The intention was to help the students, to give examples, as Ethan has eloquently expressed, to something that could take a significant portion of their time. And again, extracurricular activities, of which in high school, I don't think anyone would disagree that athletics is considered an extracurricular activity, is listed by the state as one of the 18 factors for our holistic review for those marginal students who are not able to meet the automatic admissions requirements set up by our universities. So in adding this, we were following state law, and we were trying to provide access for students who may not meet the automatic admissions requirements but still show that potential for academic success. We'll go ahead.
Can we use the word team? Are we back to team?
Yes,
we can use it at that. And I didn't hear any argument from David Batson on that while we were on the phone yesterday. whatever you proposed earlier, and in other words, than innocuous, because that sounds like bacterial meningitis. So team.
I think team, club, other generic terms like that, and then I would also incorporate the word terminology varsity letters, because that's also an inclusive term. And
You can get in letters in varsity debate.
You can.
bet.
Cheerleading.
Yes.
Cheerleading.
You can inquire. There's non-athletic varsity, but it does help. When you hear varsity, a lot of students will think, I'm in varsity sports. It'll help open that idea to them.
It denotes a competitive environment.
Yes.
That's what it was.
But with team, you've got academic decathlon team. You know,
Right.
they call that,
That was-
those are teams
yeah,
too,
and that
not
was their
just a
suggestion.
club.
Yeah.
When we look at the examples, if we look, are we looking at the examples later? Do we have okay. If we look at the examples later, perhaps the example just needs to be changed from basketball team to team.
I think just team will be
Yes.
fine. That's the whole point. Let
And-
the student interpret.
And then the example for the honors, instead of saying all-state captain, it says varsity letter. So that's an example. And the students may, Pilar, end up going back to counselors and say, what in the world are they talking about here? But we could use that in the examples and perhaps change the intro language that also exists to more the language that Ethan was talking about, which was clubs, teams, and other organizations in which you have participated in during your high school career. So we will. That was the discussion, almost in its entirety.
Yes.
From yesterday. But we will bring this up, and I've listed it under our changes to be considered. So you can see we had some fun subcommittee meetings yesterday.
I had fun in Corpus Christi.
Yes,
I
Pilar
joined Margaret.
and Margaret joined us via phone. Cheryl joined us via phone. But Pilar and Margaret discussed the fact that they were eating chocolate-covered pretzels while they were on the phone with us.
On the phone.
Yes.
And looking out at the water.
And yes, and they were looking at the water, and evidently it wasn't raining there.
No. That's nice.
Okay, so that's the subcommittee updates. What I would like to do with these next couple of sections, the main purpose of this meeting is to actually select the priorities for our changes to the next application cycle. That cycle will open in August of 2012 for the class entering in fall of 2013. I think the best way to go about doing this would be to, after we finish that piece right there, would be to go through and review all of the changes that we suggested. Tim, if you could give us an idea as we go through of what is considered a minor change or a small change for your team versus something that's going to be a large change. Then we will go back through the suggestions to select our priorities and make sure that they meet the hours allotted by the technology team to be able to make these changes. Does that sound okay to you? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I have one.
Sure.
I have one question / suggestion to maybe add that came up this week. And Risa, I'm looking at, I don't know where this, the military veteran status came from. Is that?
This is, and to give you a little bit of an idea there, this is a change that we had suggested previously.
Gotcha.
This morning, Risa came in, and Risa Potter is here, and came in and she's talked to the Veterans Affairs, and she actually, Jose quickly went and made some changes to
Beautiful.
what you're seeing, and I have some additional comments from Risa.
Well, yeah, the reason why I asked, because I had that as an item to bring up, so she beat me to the punch there, because we had a call earlier, was that Wednesday? I don't know, yesterday, about this. So I don't know if is that on the
It is
agenda?
under
Okay.
changes from previous meetings, we actually have that.
And then I have one to add if we could, and that's.
Can we do it during new business?
Absolutely.
Because under new business, that way we can add those
Sure.
at that point. New changes to be considered. Let Tim give us an idea of large or small, and then we can consider all of those. Because as we go through this list, other people may remember items that didn't make the list that we discussed previously. Okay. The first thing under our recommendation for change, however, we do want to discuss the final recommendation for reverse transfer language. This has come up as an opportunity for clarification on our applications. And if you'll look in the handouts that Jose provided for us today, if you did not get them, they're over on the table next to Maggie's name. We are trying to make some changes to reverse transfer based largely in part to the new legislative requirement that went through, and to make sure that this is clear for the students. If you'll take a look at the handout, reverse transfer statements is at the top. The initial edits are highlighted. The 2-year application, as we're on video, this is harder. The 2-year application transfer, for those of you that are not able to read this with us, says, do you wish, and a highlighted change for, your transcript to be reviewed to determine your eligibility to receive an associate's degree upon earning sufficient credit hours, comma, and do you give your consent is an edited change to allow the institution to which you are applying to send a copy of your transcript to the Texas Community College from which you are transferring to enable this review. And then the 2 answers are yes, I give my consent for this purpose, or no, I do, and then edited not, give my consent for this purpose. That's a 2-year application. Let's start with that one on the 2-year, and Daryl.
I have some major concerns with this. When this law first came about, and I asked this at the last the last meeting, I'm sure I talked about it, and I think the one before that one. My concern was that the law pertains to the 4-year schools, not the 2-year schools. I'm concerned about us having to put language concerning this on the 2-year application or on the application directed toward something 2-year schools must have to do. There are a lot of mandates that are directed toward students graduating on time, and for institutions to do everything reasonable to ensure that state resources are not expended and wasting time for students to graduate on time. For instance, the 6-drop rule, making sure that they declare major incentives to graduate on time. They get a state refund check, all kind of things like that. And now we're putting something in there that is giving the student a chance to opt out of something that in every other facet we're having to hurry them up on. For example, there are 3 external agencies that require, for different purposes, that we receive transcripts from all previous institutions. Department of Education, for the reason for FA eligibility. The Coordinating Board, for TSI purposes. Also by our accrediting agencies. SACS specifically has a policy letter that says we're to receive transcripts from all other institutions, and we have to evaluate those, and that's for the purpose of preventing the unnecessary expenditure of both private and public funds for unnecessary coursework, which goes back to the 3-peat and all that stuff. So I'm concerned that by us putting a statement on the application that gives the impression to a student that they can direct a 2-year school to disregard a transcript that we receive flies in the face of all the other mandates. I go back to my original concern. If the law says that a 4-year school has to send the transcript to us and that the student gets to opt out there, I think that's enough. If we receive a transcript, it shouldn't be up to the 2-year school to go back and double check what the intent of that transcript coming to us was based upon. We still are required by our other mandates to evaluate that. So I would suggest that we not have any language like that on the application.
Based on the letter of the law, I agree that it, in my opinion, I'll see what the rest of you think, would not necessarily need to be included on the 2-year application. the letter of the law says 4-year, and even without the law, I would suggest that the specific instance of a student saying, I would like to transfer my credit back for an associate's degree would still be affiliated with the 4-year institution. So even without the law, it doesn't, to me, make a lot of sense to put it on the 2-year application, but the 4-year application definitely.
We did discuss this last time, and it was decided to take it out.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I didn't even see that whenever you sent it. Yeah.
I just edited it because you told me to edit it, but I wrote non-applicable.
Yeah.
Wow, I wasted a lot of breath there in my voice. I really couldn't afford
Well, I
to
was
do
trying
that.
to stop you, but I'm like, okay.
It was a beautiful speech.
Thank you very much.
Very well researched, yes.
It's not applicable to a 2-year application.
Very good.
I wrote
Sorry, the
non-applicable.
evaluation process was I think it's just you and I, Darrell, Community College. We're already bogged down in applications from Kilgore to Tyler to Trinity Valley. If we got that, we would have to probably triple the size of our staff just to do transcript evaluation. Thank you, Jose.
Excellent. Okay, so taking that off the table, then going to the 4-year application transfer wording. I see you have a victory that you can leave feeling good. Okay, for the 4-year application and transfer, this first couple of lines are edited lines. If you are admitted to and subsequently enroll at the institution to which you are applying, do you give your consent for your transcript to be sent from that institution to the Texas Community College you previously attended in order to determine your eligibility to receive an associate's degree upon earning sufficient hours? Yes, I give my consent for this purpose, or no, I do not give my consent for this purpose. That's the suggested language for the 4-year application transfer.
Okay, so before any comment on this one, it was for the 4-year application. The transfer language is the transfer application is on the top. That's for the transfer application. And then for the 4-year application.
Oh, I missed a hunk.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed a hunk.
And then for
Sorry.
the 4-year, that's the 4-year application. Students that are in college, are in high school.
Oh, wait, I can do that real quick.
They could go to, they could have 30 hours or 20 hours or 40 hours of community college doing dual credit. So this is permanent, or this is for those specific students.
So it's for the 4-year freshman application?
Yes, for the 4-year freshman application.
Okay. For those that might have dual credit or something like.
Well, it still concerns me that they would have to transfer it back, and we have to evaluate every one of those, because for Darrell and I, in our SAC school, you have to complete a percentage with us, and I mean, it's still going to be tough on us.
Right, and the law does have in there, and I'm sorry that I don't remember, it does have a minimum number of hours that had to be completed at the community college in order to fit this bill.
They have to complete 30 hours.
Thank you.
At the community college. And then for the 4-year, they have to complete at least 90 hours at the 4-year school for that transcript to send that transcript to a 2-year.
My concern on this, Jose, is not so much that we have to evaluate the transcripts that come to us, because every transcript that comes in our institution, we're going to evaluate it. My concern is on here that it says the student doesn't want us to evaluate it for reverse transfer. That's my issue. Not whether we're going to get more or not, but having to have that additional burden upon us that every time we get a transcript in, we've got to go and look at that student's record to say, okay, where's this transcript from, and did this student say, yes, we can evaluate it for transfer credit or not? That's my concern. So if I get a transcript from UTEP, before I can evaluate that transcript from a 4-year school to see if I'm going to articulate credit, then I've got to go and see if that student has given me permission to do that. That's my heartburn with it.
I think that with that, for 4-year, that's the question that they have to and they have to look at the issue. What transcripts are they going to transfer, or are they going to send you based on permission from the student? As a 2-year institution, you're assuming that all those issues have been solved or have been asked by a 4-year.
Correct.
So as a 2-year, you're just receiving transcripts that apply to this.
I believe it's a procedure. It's a procedure item that has to be worked out between the universities and the community colleges. And I do know we have a lot of students that transfer back and forth. For instance, I'll use Dallas County for North Texas example. We have students that come to North Texas, they transfer back to Dallas County to take a few more hours, they come back to North Texas back and forth. We have a separate procedure in place for students. We already had a reverse transfer agreement with Dallas County. We have a separate procedure in place for the transcripts that we forward to Dallas County for consideration for an associate's degree. So students just applying back and forth are not considered on an everyday basis. It's the other procedure that runs that we then send them. These are the students who meet the qualifications, which actually our qualifications were less than what the state law had, meet the qualifications and have asked to be considered for an associate's degree, and we sent those as a group.
Can I ask, what is sufficient credit hours? Are you each going to determine that, or is it going to be after a baccalaureate degree?
It's the 30 hours in the
30
law,
at
and
your,
the 90.
at your place.
90 at ours.
Okay.
And 30 at yours.
So again, this is more of like the 4-year institution doing all the all the filtering, I guess, and making sure that all those questions are answered.
Daryl, can I just ask you something, a sidebar? Do you automatically award an associate, or do you make them apply for associate? Do you consider this as application? And do you make them meet your core and all those requirements, or is it just an hour issue?
No, they have to meet all our normal graduation requirements. The only thing that the student does not have to do is apply for graduation, but they have to meet our institutional residency requirement. They have to meet the core, and they have to satisfy the degree plan.
You're doing a degree audit for all.
We're doing a degree audit.
Well, I think that's where not Daryl and I, we are doing that, but I want to say, Jeremy's not here, if they get it back and they've received a baccalaureate degree, I think Trinity Valley does this too. They're not even doing a degree audit. They're just giving an associate degree. They're not.
Oh, no, they have to have.
I don't think they're doing that. I think they're assuming if you have a baccalaureate degree, you have the same qualifications to receive an associate degree.
There would be some major concerns with that, because especially if it's coming from, if it's not a public in-state, if it's an out-of-state, you've got core issues there. And I'll just give you an example. Lone Star College in Houston has a kinesiology PE requirement that not every 2-year college has. So there would be some big concerns with that.
No,
I think.
you do have to have a degree audit. I mean, that's part
I'm
of
not sure all of them are doing that. I'll have to go back and ask, because a lot of them, in that instance, they just do a course substitution as part of it. I'll find out. We will have a regional TACRO meeting, and so we may need to discuss this further of how they're handling these reverse transcripts and automatic awarding of associate's degree, because we're all going into this completer funding issue, and so I'm afraid that a lot of them
We don't substitute the courses. We don't substitute core. They have to follow our degree plan, and we have a lot of transcripts that we get from the university back to us. You know, out of 4,000 transcripts they give us, we only graduate like 360.
Yeah, we don't have that. Even I think, like Becky was talking, they have their own with Dallas County. We have our own with UT Tyler, and I think once they mark you, yes, I want to, they think it's going to be an automatic. And once we do a degree audit, they may not even meet our core and those requirements. So then we actually send them a degree audit and what they're missing.
My whole concern with wanting to delete all that 2-year information was that if a student says, yes, I do give my consent, or no, I don't, then that's a separate tracking event that we have to do at the 2-year level. And I can tell you, we've awarded 5,000 associate degrees in the last 6 years, and we've only had one student complain about that. And we handle that on an individual basis where we had, and I gave this example last time, he was applying for he was on a private scholarship, and that scholarship would not continue to pay if he had earned a degree. So we had to go back and rescind that degree. But I would rather handle those students on an individual basis than try to track thousands and thousands and thousands of students, and then add that additional burden in there that before I go and evaluate that transcript, that I've got to go and check, can I evaluate this transcript or not? I don't even want to go there.
As a 2-year, you're not, yeah, that's more for a 4-year. That's an issue for a 4-year. They have to check that.
But at the same time, I share Janet's concern that with a student giving this consent, it may give them the false hope or the impression that they're going to get an associate's degree, and I don't know how the other schools are doing it, but that's not the case with us either.
Well, I do think those are good points. I also think in reading the language again, because of the law and because of some of the concerns that you guys have raised, I wonder if we shouldn't continue to work on this wording specifically so it also puts in the guidelines that they have to have at least 30 hours from the community college and complete 90 hours at the university in order to consider this.
Well,
So
I'm sorry.
We did discuss that internally, and we didn't want to give too
Restricting parameters.
Yeah, we didn't want to confuse the student. So the wording that we came up with, it's not guaranteeing an associate's to anybody. It's just guaranteeing a review for determining eligibility. So we didn't want to go. I did have that language in on my first draft of like 90 hours and 30 hours and all this other stuff, and it just got too much. And what McGregor wanted is something simple for the student to say yes or no.
And then
if they ever meet that criteria, because more than likely some students will not meet the criteria at the beginning, but at the end, whenever they're doing summer school at a 2-year community college or whatever, they might meet that 30-hour threshold. So that's why he wanted more simplistic, open language.
And then it's based on the procedures by the universities who are transferring the work back or sending the transcripts back to pull these students that meet this criteria, regardless of if the student said yes and they only had 3 hours from EPCC, then they wouldn't fall into our criteria.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Eligibility and sufficient credit.
Okay, I'm okay with that then.
Earning the sufficient.
Yeah, believe me,
Very
we had
generic.
I had it all in a huge paragraph, and yeah.
It also leaves it open when the legislation is changed to be different hours. We don't have to continue to change our wording. I'm okay with that because then it's based on, because I know how we pull for Dallas. It's programmed, so it's a program that's set up that says when they hit this, then pull the transcripts for submission back to Dallas County.
But are you okay with the edits that Cheryl made? That's the critical point.
I marked out your first set, so I go back and look at them again.
Yeah, the first set is for the transfer application.
Application.
Not 2-year application.
No, not 2-year. Sorry.
Yeah, the first one is so the top one, the first one we read is the transfer application.
Only.
And the bottom one, the second one that I read, was for the freshman application for 4-year. Okay, so in light of that, do we see any additional edits? And based on the conversation that we've had, do you have any additional edits for either of those 2 paragraphs?
Just one comment for the 4-year freshman app. Do you want to use terminology like dual credit in that conversation? Is that something the student's going to recognize, or is that going to be actually making it more complex?
We didn't want to use dual credit just because of the last conversation that we had that people even high schools and institutions use different terms for dual credit. That's the only reason that we didn't use dual credit in the language.
Should it be, should it be listed as an example?
We can.
I don't want to make my whole meeting based on examples. So just a recommendation. I'm perfectly fine with
It's a good
the rest.
recommendation.
Yes. Thank you for your time.
Excuse me, I have a question. Is this question going to appear for all students, or so if they've never attended a 2-year school,
That was my question.
they're still going?
For transfer.
Nope, this one for freshmen.
Freshmen.
And I think, Jose, that's a good question, because I had the same thought, is that should we add some language that into this that says something about if you have completed hours at a community college?
Or what you could do, I think it depends on if you make this an audited question. Required. If you want it to be required, everybody has to fill it out. Then you need a third option.
It will be required.
Then you need a third option. I have no previous college enrollment or something like that.
Okay.
That they can, to mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not applicable. No college.
No, I would actually say I have no previous college coursework or something like that, because not applicable. I don't want that option when they may have 80 hours of coursework.
But I got a question. I appreciate those comments, but maybe with the instead of the letter of the law, the intent and the spirit of the law, maybe we shouldn't differentiate that and say we have a separate question, or you don't have to answer this if you never attended a community college, because there are a lot of students at the 4-year schools that are concurrently enrolled at a 2-year school. We have a number of students that got the reverse degree from EPCC, and they didn't start with us first. They started at UTEP. And then after their first semester, they came back to us and picked up some classes, like the freshman English, because the classes were too big at UTEP. And they wound up getting the reverse associate's degree from us before they actually graduated from UTEP. Mm-hmm. So maybe the language on here should, instead of you previously attended, to be more active. If you attend a community college.
If you have previously or will attend?
Well, this is making the assumption that this law only applies to students that start at a community college, not someone that might start at the 4-year school and then go back to the community college before finishing at the university. So I think this kind of excludes certain population there that we're already awarding the reverse degrees to.
How about if we change the yes to yes, if I previously attended or attend in the future a Texas community college, I give my consent for this purpose.
Oh, I have a major issue with that, because that means we're going to have to predict and be able to then map every single student as they go through the swirling. I mean, we have it, you have it.
No.
We already have that.
You don't map it. You just, when I'm thinking about our process, all we're doing with this question is saying, yes, the student says we can send their transcript back. All we're trying to get is a yes.
Right.
So we have a yes.
I just don't want the intent to be from a student who says, I'm coming in and I may take courses at Lone Star College 3 years from now.
But here's the problem. By the law, if they do, if they fall under this law.
Understand that, but our process, if a student stops out, they have to reapply in our institution, and that's where we capture this.
Let's see, and ours do not.
See, ours, and so that's where my concern is, because if they have stopped out at my institution, they have to submit a new application, and that's where we capture the fact that they are coming back with some additional college work. The students who are continually swirling between us and HCC or Lone Star, we'll have to catch those another way. But for those students, because they may not know at the point of application that they have an intent to go to Lone Star or San Jacinto or HCC until they get on campus and realize the cost is just too prohibitive, and then they say, oh, well, let me just go ahead and stop out. Automatically, they've said or they've given the option previously, so their plans may have changed, and so we are not going to be capturing and transmitting that student's data back and forth. So I'd rather look at this from their coursework they've done versus coursework that they intend to do in the future.
Okay, so if we take that back out of the yes, we still have the question that Jose brought up, which I do think is a good question. This is a freshman application, and students may not, this may confuse students who haven't taken classes. Because if it's required for all students to answer, and a student has no community college credit, then it's going to be confusing to them.
But you could still have the question that says, I have no previous college enrollment. I mean, as an option, as option 3. So, yes, I give my consent. No, I don't give my consent, and I have no previous college enrollment or coursework or whatever you want to call it.
Because as a stop out, they have to reapply, and they will
capture that on the readmission
application.
Not all universities require them to reapply.
And they won't be a freshman at that point, so they won't.
Right, they won't be filling this application out.
But not all universities require students to reapply once they stop out.
I understand that.
So there is no application, is what I'm saying.
There's no new application.
There's no new application. If they're not required to reapply, there's no new application. I just want to throw that out there for people to hear, because
Well, even if they did, they wouldn't get this. This only comes at the freshman app.
At the freshman app level.
Even if they did, they wouldn't get this. It only comes at the freshman level. No one's
or
gonna,
transfer.
Yeah, that confused me. I thought this was.
There's 2 applications.
You see, I don't think the law states, and I don't think the intent of the law was to say whether or not they've attended a junior college yet. I think
Not yet, no.
I think the intent of the law was to either give I think the intent of the law was to give the student the chance to say yes or no whether or not they want any earned university level credit to be transferred back to a 2-year school. I think that is solely the intent of the law.
Right. And the intent of our question, I thought, was to get permission to send those transcripts back. It had nothing to do with the law. I mean, the law is the law.
Exactly.
But this was to get permission from the students to transfer their credits back.
If they wish.
If they wish. Or for them to be able to say, I opt out and I do not want my credits transferred back. So what we're doing by adding a 3rd example on the freshman one for universities that don't require a 2nd application for those students who stop out and swirl around, and we know they do, is that student could say, no, I don't give my consent for this purpose because they never went to a community college. Then they transfer out, go to a community college, complete 30 hours, and come back in. They don't have to fill out a new application, so we still have them as a no because they said no.
See, I think that's where we'll be remiss if we, as a committee, allow that to occur.
That's what I think, too.
But my concern is if I have a student who told me no, and then they fill out my readmission application and tell me yes, then you've got conflicting information, and we have to look at the most recent. And again, I'll go back to, you're asking a student to predict their future enrollment, and they may not know that they are going to go to a community college in the future. So then that intent may be, well, I don't plan to enroll, so I'm going to say I have no college coursework. But then things change, and then we've already, whether they go or not, or if they go, whether we capture them or not, they've already given us an answer. And I just have a concern about asking the student to predict their future enrollment in 2 or 3 terms down the road.
I think if we put the 3rd option as I don't have any college credit,
Previous college enrollment.
or not even enrollment, just credit.
Okay.
Coursework, or just make it simple for the on their language. I think that would satisfy both UNT and U of H process. Because technically, this is a 4-year issue.
They would still be left out a future opportunities to have reverse transfer.
Let me ask this question just for devil's advocate argument purposes. Let's just say that the question is goes to print the way it's presented here, and the student answers, yes, I give my consent for this purpose, but they have not previously attended a college. How would your school handle that, Jeff?
If a student says, yes, I give my consent, and we don't see that they attended a previous place, we have nowhere to send the transcript back to, so it's a moot issue.
Okay, but they return at a later date, and this question isn't on another application.
Well, we're having to do that right now, in fact, with students who we're with our reverse transfers with San Jacinto, Houston Community College, San Jacinto, and Lone Star, where we've had to create sort of an opt-in mechanism for students that applied and have coursework when this question wasn't on ApplyTexas. So we're already having to do that now.
Okay.
And so, but
I can see that would be.
But ideally, we want it on the app so that we can have it load, mapped in our system, and then as students get to the point where we can identify them based on number of UH hours and number of transferred hours from San Jacinto, Lone Star, HCC, we can then articulate those transcripts via Speedy back to the institution who may be granting the associate's degree.
Well, from an operational perspective, you have a good argument for that case.
Can I tell you how let me tell you how someone that doesn't require another application would do it. We would say that the student said, yes, they give their consent. And we have it programmed so that when we run the process, we look to see if the student has a prior community college, doesn't matter when, just do they have the prior community college before attending North Texas, even if it was a second or third time. They said, yes, it's okay to share my transcript, and they meet the hours. And then we send it.
I feel like a referee. Again, you have a good argument,
thanks.
too.
I just wanted to hear that I had a good argument. I don't know what the answer is to this one. I'm concerned in getting too bogged down in the actual linguistics of the law as much as this was supposed to just say the students for FERPA requirements have said, yes, you can share my transcripts back, even though that's taken care of with the law too, I think now.
Maybe we should just state it as simply as you said right there. Considering FERPA requirements, do you consent to have your transcript sent to any two-year school that you have attended? And I don't want to say or may attend.
Well, if you say, do you consent to allowing your transcript to be shared with a community college, with the community college, with Texas Community College, in order for consideration for a associate's degree?
Yes or no?
I mean, that's very simple. It doesn't have anything to do in the student's mind with the law, which they won't know anything about, and it still allows us to say the 30 hours and the 90 hours.
And then still have your own internal operation procedures.
And the other question that we had with this, the other piece that we were trying to figure out is this a default yes or a default no? And I think we had voted on a default yes, because we realized the students on the page that this actually shows up, about half the time they probably don't read them. And so they don't answer them. And so if it defaults yes, that's going to opt in the majority of them. I think, isn't that right? That we can quickly clarify that this is an opt-in yes. Tim, yay, it's an opt-in yes. We got that part clarified. We just don't know what it's going to say. But maybe it is a more generic, I agree to allow my transcript to be shared for potential use.
Review of.
For determination
or potential use in a reverse or in the awarding of an associate's degree.
I like the word keep review in there.
Yes, please, because just because I want to make sure that they have the understanding that by checking this does not mean you're going to get an AA.
You're not going to get one.
And that's exactly what we.
And we're not even going to send all of them, because if they don't meet these requirements, we're not even going to send it back
until they reach that point. Yeah.
And it has to be 30 hours from one community college too.
That was my question, because you could have a student that went dual credit at one and then came in, did the majority of hours for
Right.
So
It's 30 hours from one community college.
But your system is going to determine that the student has completed 30 hours at
Yes.
that institution.
Right. That's how we have our setup to run.
Jana, I would welcome you to come to Houston, where we have students who go to Lone Star, change their son to an HCC, sometimes each semester.
Oh, yeah.
And that's our issue with this, that before this question was out there and we were doing our reverse transfer agreements, we opted to the institution where the student has earned the most amount of hours, realizing that we're not trying to grant associates to all three of these institutions, just it's whichever one the student has the most number of hours at. The only thing I have a concern with is the 30-hour residency, I guess if you want to call that, from the community colleges. Jose, is that standard from all community colleges?
Ours is 25%.
Because
Saxon says 25%, so ours is 15 hours they have to earn.
well, and that's the
Dallas
thing that
County is
concerns
15
me
hours.
is the law. I don't know if the law trumps what the community colleges have, but whatever that intent is, because even our three agreements that my institution has with the three in Houston, they all have different hour limits.
Yes.
Because it's based on their institutional resident course enrollment requirements. And so I'm a little hesitant putting an hour limitation on there because...
Well, we're not going to.
Yeah.
We decided not to put hours in there, yeah, because we thought it would, and my thought with the law is that at minimum we have to agree, universities have to agree to send a 30-hour community college completion transcript back. But if you have something, our agreement with Dallas County is 15. And so we were sending 15 from them and 45 from us, and we're sending it back for students who were opting in. But it's I think it's at minimum it has to be we send it 30 hours. But we don't want to, Jose brought this up a while ago, we're not going to put in the hours, so then it still gives us the leeway to work with our districts in additional partnerships.
That, and you don't want to confuse the student.
Well, I concur. I think that the question is just permission for release. As the individual agreements are reached between community colleges and institutions, four-year institutions, as well as the law changes over the years, then I think that will be a better way to appropriate this question.
And I just want to say, we do want to increase those graduation rates. That's one of the biggest things
Yes.
we want to do. And Jose can probably say this, we have so many students that have completed 15, but not 30 dual credit hours. And so we could capture that. I was making sure, too, that was a good question, Ethan, because I don't want to stop at the 30 hours. I want to get more that will do reverse transfers. Thank you.
In light of time, and just because I'm not cold, because I need a break really quick is what I need. What I would like to say is that we consider the change so that Tim can, if we decide that this is a change that needs to be made on the application, Tim can schedule it for hours of work, but that we need a group of us to continue working on the language. And I would suggest automatically on that committee would be Daryl and Jana, and of course Jose. Jeff, I would ask that you participate, and then I'm asking for anyone else who'd like to volunteer. Cheryl?
I'm going to put Jeremy on there too, because I think he does it differently than we do.
And Mary's not here, but Mary Lindbergh is not here, but I would suggest Mary Lindbergh from Houston Community College.
And I think this could be done via emails. I'll put myself on there too, just because. Anyone else feel a dire need to be on this conversation? This will be something, and Tim, you can give us kind of a calendar of when you would absolutely need this, because I have a feeling it'll be something that'll be voted in as a change that we want to see. So this will be something we'll do via email, and will need to be done fairly quickly with new wording that we agree. So that we can get this change back, assuming that it is suggested as a change for the next cycle.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
It looks like I don't have a copy of the app with me, but I believe the app currently just has like a checkbox. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
So this is an intentional change to move from the checkbox to a list of choices that you then make. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
That is a clear clear direction that you're going in, just so that I can.
Yeah, the recommendation is going to be to move that little checkbox from the educational background to the certification page and make it a required question.
But that's my point. My question is, are you moving from it being a checkbox to something where you say yes, no, or this doesn't apply to me in some way? That's technically a change that I need to know about, as opposed to just moving it from where you're still going to leave it a checkbox, but you're just going to change the text.
No, that's what we're saying is that will be the additional of the choice of the checkbox. So they'll have to check a yes or no or a third choice if we have it.
Okay.
But we would like it to be, if they skip it, to be an opt-in, unless we make it audited. No, you said it's going to be audited, so but have an opt-in. I mean, the yes would be the automatic.
The default.
The default choice.
We could do either that, either audit and make sure they answer it if you don't make a default, or have it default. That's a minor thing.
Great. I show 10:44 on the clock over there. If I'd like to propose a very short break, basically because I need one, that will come back in actually at 10 till. So really a short 6-minute break. So at 10:50, we'll start back up again. starting.
High school in 10 years.
Everybody come back, please.
Let's move on.
Yeah. Gotta keep moving. I'm trying. It's looking less likely that I'll have us out of here by noon, though. So, for those of you that were not going to participate in lunch, yes, you're going to help. We had decided to, because there was a small group, we didn't purchase lunch today to be delivered, and we decided to meet through lunch and then call this done earlier than potentially if we'd had lunch. So there'll be no break for lunch. We're going to go straight through and finish up. Where we are now is actually to go through, I'd like to go through the suggested changes for the next cycle, whatever that might be, and let Tim give us an idea. Is this a big change, a small change? Then we'll come back through and select our priorities. Tim will have to help us then make sure that we're not overtaxing on the number of hours that they have on the technical team to provide these. So one of those recommendations is the one we just discussed, which is the reverse transfer language. Continuing on, I just want to do a review. And Tim, you did ask us if that was going to be a change in just verbiage or if it's also going to be a change in the check boxes. It will be both. So is that, I know that makes it a larger time
It moves it, I guess, from a minor, the text changes that don't affect any choices, any other choices on it. They're just simply interface changes as far as text are minor. This would move it not to a major category, but something that would take a few more hours because you're going to involve, some change in the EDI and some values. We'd have to see. But text changes are minor, so.
Okay.
Whatever y'all decide to put there.
So this is a mid-range then because of the change of the check boxes?
I would say the lower end of mid-range. Can we go there?
Oh, yeah, even lower of mid. I like that even better. Okay. Continuing on then, we had discussed previously possible application essay revisions, and that was actually suggested that we just change the topics. So we have some new topics for essays. Correct?
Did not receive wording right now, so since we don't have wording from UT suggested or from, do you have some? No, and I don't either, so we may have to wait until the next cycle.
I will tell you, the high school counselors last week asked if it would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did they have to ask you?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I would also suggest that if we do make the change, that we actually make sure that we contact the universities who are using the essays, not just A&M UT, because there are others, to make sure that they know that. It has been a question. Many high school counselors, every time we get together, they say, are the essays going to change?
Right.
So they're preparing right now their juniors for next year's cycle. So,
well, could we
need to have more of an advance notice than now? So it's better.
Yeah, let's table this then. The committee for the next year will research and will come up with additional or with changes for the essays. Then the counselors could be warned that for the 14-15 application, fall of 14 application, the ones that are applying for fall of 14.
I understand.
Okay.
You don't need to go spend 15 minutes on this.
For the students applying for the fall of 14, there will be changes to the essay topics. That'll give them time to plan.
I second that. I think that perhaps we should have a process for vetting new essay topics and include institutions who use it, perhaps use some professional associations for input as well.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to take that off the table, and it'll be for discussion for addition to changes for the next committee. Social Security number filed restrictions.
That field restrictions?
It should be field restrictions. I was like, what's a filed? Field restrictions for Social Security numbers that begin with a 9. Anyone remember what that was?
That was one. That was a correction I had. I just remembered that.
They're not real Social Security numbers. Do you want to remember what the change would be, though? What we were asking for ApplyTexas to do, for the technical team to do with this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
There was, and I think this may have also dealt with the fact that there were some changes to Social Security administration with numbering this year. And I think students, something about students that entered or had older numbers. There are some numbers that are also being recycled. So I want to say earlier this fall, rather, there were some changes that were done with regard to Social Security that campuses need to at least look at with regard to the numbers that they're capturing and then what they import into their information systems. Typically, I know from our standpoint, if a student's provided with a Social Security number that appeared in their mind to be valid, it was erroring out because it was either a situation where the student had not provided a number that was a valid SSN number, or a student had provided a number that had been recycled from a previous SSN number. And I know that's the extent of it, but I do know that there were some requests to make changes this past fall with campuses from the Social Security Administration with regard to how we store SSN numbers.
So is the change how we store it in ApplyTexas, or so that it would take something that looks like a made-up SSN?
I think it's not the storing issue. I think it can't be the storing issue because, you're only storing 9 numbers there. But I think in the 9 specifically was one of the things that came up. And I don't know have more information other than the fact that numbers that begin with 9 are not allowable SSN numbers.
Is it an international issue, Pat, maybe?
Yeah, well, I think it's, the 9s are like tax ID numbers that are given to international students or international people, residents, whatever, before they get the Social Security number. And so you're given a temporary, what's called a temporary SSN, but I don't know that it really comes from Social Security. But and they usually start with 9. I don't know that there are no valid SSNs starting with 9. We'd have to research that. But I get a hint that that's kind of what they're after, is they want to audit, some sort of audit maybe in Apply-Texas that would say, oh, wait a minute, you just entered a 9-something number. That's not a valid SSN, and in which case we would not take it into our system and treat it as an SSN.
I think from the email that came in, I think they did have that research already, that there in Texas there's not a valid Social Security that starts with a 9. Mm-hmm. So it's just a restriction, like how we did, like alphas and all that. It's just adding an additional restriction to the field.
So the restriction would allow a 9 or not allow a 9?
Would not allow a 9.
Would not allow
it would just be, there'd be an audit that would probably send back an error message that would say, this is not a valid SSN.
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe it's not a required field anyway, so if they didn't have a valid SSN, they could go on and apply, correct? I think that's, correct.
That's right.
So that would be a fairly minor change.
Okay, so that's minor.
Social Security website.
I would like some
no
verification.
With 9.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you.
Some verification that that's really what you want. You want an audit that says if you input an SSN that starts with a 9, send an error and tell them that that's not that they can't do that.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
All right, so that explains that one. The next one was to modify high school grad date to month, day, and for year. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory what we're asking there.
Wait, why do we want to do that?
I don't know.
Do we remember the date that we graduated from high school? Is this something that is, why do we want the date? Why don't we just want a month and a year?
Does anyone remember why we wanted the date? I make up a date in my system.
So why? But why? It's a big change, right?
It's not an insignificant change to move from a 6-byte field to an 8-byte field and make all the changes downstream for all of that. And I don't know.
Really?
Aren't they? I don't know. Yeah, and I'm just the technical guy, but I'm not sure that the students are going to know their date of graduation, are they?
There really wasn't any explanation of why this institution wanted to change this. So I just put it in there for discussion.
I wouldn't agree either, because we're looking at basically May of the graduation year.
Or June.
Yes.
Yeah, but they won't know their date. No. They won't. Not even sometimes the counselors, they look at a calendar.
June 4th. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Carol does.
Oh, after the fact. But if they fill it out at the beginning,
what future going to be
the future date, they won't know.
Still, you're going to capture the month.
Yeah,
right.
That's all you need.
They'll know it's June or they'll know it's May.
Well, seeing that this is a significant change, and there was an explanation as to why they need the date, and the committee also does not foresee a reason to need the date, can we just go ahead and say no to this one?
Yes.
I would say no, and then if they want to bring it back to the committee, just to have an explanation why.
And that's a good point to bring up if anyone is watching or listening to this later, is that when you do suggest changes, it really helps to have an explanation of those suggested changes so we know what the intention is. It helps us with scheduling. Okay, list more than one high school on the international application.
I also have a question. I noticed that we don't list more than one high school on the U.S. application either. Is that
because we elect the last school attended is what we want to know.
Okay. I've been reading freshman files this week, and I find that for people who have attended more than one high school, there's kind of a, when you're looking at the extracurriculars, you will see somebody did something all the way through the junior year, and then all of a sudden they do nothing. And so I don't know if that's of any interest to anybody but me, but I am always curious because sometimes they address it in the essay and sometimes they don't. But it was asked for on the international transfer because people do attend more than one high school these days.
What kind of time are we looking at?
It's not trivial, but it's not huge. It would involve, right now, if it's just asking for one, it involves a file change and then a change in the EDI and a change in the interface. But it's not a really large project. But it's not trivial. It's one of the larger ones in these lists.
It is one of the larger in the list.
It was Catherine's request. Do you know why? Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that explains that one. We'll just keep that on here for now to come back and discuss.
Okay.
Add extracurricular activities module to the international undergraduate transfer application.
Yes, it's not on there currently, and when I talked with the IT people, it seems to have just been an omission. It was not intentional. So it's also, as I understand it, not a big deal to add it.
Not a big deal. There was a question about whether it's optional or required. There's on that page, I think there's something. You choose required modules and you choose optional modules, and so we would need to know where to put it, but it's relatively minor to put it there.
All right, the next one was to add a checkbox, a yes, no, earning concurrent degrees from multiple institutions.
This
checkbox where?
Oh, I don't know. And this is one that, this came from us, and I think we would just put this on the back burner. This is not pressing. It is a new trend to see international students receiving dual degrees, and we're seeing more and more, but I think we'll wait until they get to a little more critical mass before we push on this. I'm sorry?
Was it just to capture intent?
Yes. Well, no. It was if you're actually doing it.
Oh, if you're,
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll take
you
that
apply
one.
for college. Yeah, let's just put on.
Let's table that.
We'll table that one. It can always be brought up again for the next cycle. Add the ability to attach supporting documents via system to applications. I've gotten this one from a lot of schools wanting the opportunity. I know this is big.
Yeah, it's real big.
Real big.
At this point, I wouldn't even know how to respond, except that there's so many issues and questions that would have to be answered about where the documents are and how they're accessed and who owns them and this kind of thing, that it would be major project.
One of the things I was thinking,
Major.
whatever institution's asking for this, and I know, Pillow, this came up in our T-Rex question, and I know we get it all the time because the common application allows for this. Well, they're not using the same mechanisms we use. But I think that the one thing that's out there is institutions could allow for transmission of data via a dynamic question, but that I know has some character limitations, space to that. And it may be the best scenario or the alternative method to be in right now. This may also, I know we're working on what is the import thing that we're doing?
API.
Yes, and that maybe I would suggest be something that if it's not on the list, to look at for the list with the API, because I continue to get a lot of questions from high school counselors about why the students can't submit resumes, personal
Expand it.
statements,
Expand it.
those kinds of things when they submit their applications. And they would like to do it at the same point that the application is uploaded, not having to navigate to a different institutional page and upload that information. And I'll mention what I said sort of a couple minutes ago. The reality of the situation is that as more and more institutions across the state are using Naviance as a software tool for their high school counselors as their college portfolio, that's allowed as a mechanism for students who do the Common Application. And it just so happens that Naviance and Common App are built by the same folks who build the same database, so it's easy for them. But we're continuing to have to not explain but justify why ApplyTexas has limitations that Common App doesn't. So I think it would just be something to look at if we want to see increased usage. And it's not just at private schools, because even many public schools, Houston ISD, for example, just purchased Naviance this past year. So more and more large publics using it as well. So I think it'd be something to take a look at.
And I've also, I've gotten this suggestion from the grad and international side too. So it's not just an undergraduate concern. I had grad international people also contacting me asking to please bring this up. I know it's huge, and it is mostly resumes, personal statements, additional documents that a department might require for the graduate side. If usually those are essays or personal statements as well, but that way they can send it all in one bulk piece. Okay, that explains. Yes.
What we might be able to do is just at least put on our. Begin to spend some time scoping this out, because this is something that does come up every year, and it is something that like you said, it's other systems do, and it's something we ought to be able to. I think we ought to be able to tackle, but maybe at least we can begin scoping out what the issues are and how we could solve them.
You know, topic C is just the perfect essay question where they can make that personal statement or they can say extenuating circumstances. I'm not real crazy about topic A and B because they'll just talk about what you asked them, another person or the issue, and never really tell about themselves. But I guess the only thing that would be an extended resume. I think that's basically probably the feature in the Common App that isn't in ours, that the students feel like the activities they put don't really capture them when a student goes into some kind of holistic review. That's all.
Right. Okay.
Of course, we could opt not to receive that information from Naviance or these other people and just use our application.
Go ahead with that, Ethan.
Just a statement that I would like to make, that we don't have to use a third-party vendor in any of these scenarios.
And but it's not just that one. We have Collegiate, so there's a lot of other ones. Revolution. There's a lot of other companies jumping on the bandwagon.
I would make that statement again, Pilar. We don't have to use third-party vendors for all of this.
Well,
we do it
Ethan,
ourselves.
I understand that, but I will suggest. I do want to go back and say, if many high schools are using these different systems and it's easier to include this information on those systems, then we need to find a way to embrace that in the mechanism that we have.
That's the same issue with transcripts.
So that they can, which is why we've been sort of advocating T-Rex to have some opportunities for change, and TEA is doing that. So I think this is an opportunity where we've got to say, if we want to continue to be in this state, for ApplyTexas to be the premier way for students to apply and submit that information to us, we've got to make some changes for ApplyTexas
I
to
support
capture
that
that.
wholeheartedly.
The next, and just to remind everyone, Tim said that was major real big on that one. The next suggested change is add gender under dependent information for students with student visas. And I know this came, oh, good. I know it came from international. Oh, yay, we can take that one off. Okay, the next one, student self-identified participants / interest.
I still think we're asking that, and your clubs, organizations, and things like that. Is that where the students are putting it?
No, this was specific to Avid and Trio and those type programs, and I haven't actually seen them ever listed there. But and this just came up.
Yes, it did.
I submitted this.
Oh, there you go. I was like, I know, I just saw this recently.
I was approached by my institution to have this included. We can work through this through an open field of extracurricular activity. I agree. We may need to include an example, but the
we
question.
We have an example open.
Exactly. We have a space for an example. And Maggie also, Maggie Hinojosa had also sent me a statement that she was interested in this piece also. I think that there's a growing participation in the AVID programs and that, or the TRIO programs. And I know that it's still relatively new that institutions of higher education, specifically 4 years, are really trying to promote an undergraduate research and to try to find those students. This is minor. If it is feasible to add, I don't want to complicate the application, but I'll just simply bring it to the committee for consideration.
If we add it to the extracurricular section with perhaps an example, and you have been the example person today, that would seem like, to me, it would be minor, Tim, if we just...
We're just adding a question? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's either we could add a question or we could actually group this with extracurricular activities and just change an example to be something like this.
That's minor.
Well,
is adding a question minor?
Not as minor as changing,
just checking.
example.
And I would say that I think that the reason that this is coming up is AVID post-secondary. You need to identify those students that were AVID so that they can be served on the college campus. And so and so I think that the argument for adding it as an actual box would be that you could isolate that field and say these are our incoming AVID students. Right. And I actually would argue that Gear Up should be added as well, because so many of those college access programs now we need to track into higher ed, and this would be a function for doing that, and also provide services once they get to college, and this would be a way to identify them early and to sort of plan ahead for what those service packages need to look like.
Based on that and the need to track, can we still track them if we elect to do a question? Could we still track them in one question? Are you AVID, Gear Up?
I mean, if you have check boxes that you can, then you could isolate those responses.
And include them in a drop down.
Right.
Or check boxes.
It would have to be a check
boxes so you could have more than one.
But if it's just in an extracurricular field where there's listing a whole bunch of stuff, you wouldn't be able to pull that.
Yeah, for you to be able to get the specific data out, you really needed to say, I did this.
But I think that's where that's coming from.
Okay. So we're kind of leaning toward question with check boxes.
Yeah. It could be a dynamic question. I don't know.
Could be a dynamic question.
UTBTSC's TRIO program for our students is called Talent Search. And if you were to put TRIO, the students might not necessarily know that a TRIO encompasses other programs and that it's a TRIO program because they know it as Talent Search.
Right.
Or, our students are in AVID classes, they wouldn't know, unless you specifically put it. I think you have to be so specific because students won't know that.
Yeah, I definitely think for TRIO you'd have to list Talent Search, Upward Bound. You'd have to list sort of all of them out. But those are the programs that I'm seeing right now that are going to be required by Gear Up legislation requires that you sort of follow those students and continue to serve the bulk of your students wherever they go. And so that would be a way for K-12 or for fiscal agents to track where those students are going.
Okay. Well, that explains that.
Idea.
And we know now we're looking at a question with check boxes, which is not minor but not as major as adding the documents, because you didn't say major real big.
Right.
Okay, so the next one is delete word mailing from question 10, permanent address. I think that's self-explanatory. We'll go ahead and go to the back page. Thanks. Yeah, that's going to the next page. Changes, these are changes that... These are changes... moving now to changes from previous meetings that we need to make sure, and this is where if you remember anything that's not included here that we did discuss in previous meetings, we want to make sure in the new business we'll make sure we add those before we go back through and select the ones we're most interested in changing for the next cycle. I don't know. Emergency contact, make question required, further make phone or email required, but not both. I remember this discussion. Was this
minor?
This is minor.
It's minor? Yeah. Even if you have to do an either or? Because they wanted phone or email, but not both.
Required both. you're just saying they have to do one or the other, right?
Right.
So there's just it's relatively minor. There's an audit or something that would say, oh, you didn't do either one.
Oh, good.
Right? But you're making it
Yes,
required.
right.
So it's an audit.
Oh,
yeah.
good. So this is minor. Question 26 on freshman app. We might need to look at question 26 on the freshman app. Let's see. It is top 10% transfer applicants, rewrite question based on legislation and rules. And I seem to remember this particular topic going around in circles.
Yeah, me too.
When we talked about it.
Couldn't find it or something.
Yeah, I don't remember us.
It was not on. So it was suggested that it was not in the online app, and that might have been.
I think that was the problem.
I don't see any question 26.
It was somewhere else. And
I think it was 26.
That could be a problem
The
too.
question is there because we had to add it last year, but I don't think it was question number 26.
Let's see if we can find that question. So we'll put a question. I'm gonna put a question mark next to that question at this point. So
It
that
looks
we
like
can,
it's just text changes, though. Is that?
It
right?
does look like a text change if we can even identify it.
Okay, which is minor. So
Next one.
we could even identify it.
And then the next one, while Jose's looking for that particular question, does anyone remember who brought it up? No. Yeah.
On the transfer app, do you think?
It says on here from transfer applications, top 10% transfer applicants. I remember, for lack of a better word, arguing about this at our previous meeting.
Oh, this is the people who are coming back after their.
Yes.
They were admitted. They were admitted as top 10 freshmen, and now they're transferring. They want to come back to you.
Yes.
Oh, it's here, yeah.
about it?
It's on the transfer. So there is a checkbox. So what do they want to do?
There was just a little history. There was a piece of legislation that passed 2 sessions ago that mandated if students were in the top 10%
Graduated top 10.
from their high school, then they, and how this impacted their ability to be admitted into an institution where they're transferring to. So we had to add that because we actually were sort of out of compliance last year because we did not have the question on the application after the legislation was passed. So we had to add that.
So it's finding the questions actually in the transfer app. Jose, if you're not in the transfer app.
Yeah, you got to be in the top 10. It's self-reported.
Mm-hmm.
Did you graduate?
It also flags for the scholarship.
Look at that one there.
Attached to that.
No.
Yeah, that's it right there.
That's it right there. Number
check.
Number, yeah.
Or something or other.
For whatever.
Is it already been done?
It's
They
there.
wanted to change the wording. Whoever
Yeah.
this came from was changing the wording somehow.
This rewrite question, yeah.
To what?
Gave it to me.
Whoa.
I don't like that question.
But I think we need to look at the
There's
piece
I
of legislation
believe, but it says I
because
believe.
if the fact that it says I believe I qualify,
That's going to put everybody's going to believe.
that's sort of not really telling us much. I do think we need to go back at the look at the piece of legislation and see what does that legislation stipulate and require, if you will, and then come back to this and see, are we asking what the legislation wants us to ask or not?
Okay, well, on this one, what we'll do is we're going to continue to go through and review these, and then we'll assign it to someone based on selection for a change to rewrite, so we can just keep moving.
Jeff, do you think that that legislation also covered, because if the student moves to another university, they get 2222 or 2244 on the scholarship that's attached to the top 10% if they can show $1 of need? Do you think maybe that was part of that?
I don't think it was a scholarship piece. I think it was definitely a piece about automatic admission.
Right, but they didn't have the other piece to it.
Because they have a year after their high school graduation for automatic admission to stay in effect. So I can see that they do a semester at a community college and then...
Still want to use it.
Yeah. Okay, so, and Tim, since this is a wording change, minor?
Minor.
Okay, excellent. The next one is to make the additional information blue text larger, where we're asking students to give us additional information. It was just changing the size of the font on the additional information, quote, blue. Like, for example, BA in history.
I'm sorry, we can't do that.
Okay, excellent. I'll just take that one off the table.
That should be minor. Is it just
Minor.
anything in blue, basically?
That was as I remember it, it was just to make it a little bit larger so that it stood out more.
Because it looks like it's
Yeah.
just a size
Okay.
smaller than your normal.
Yeah. Okay, so that also is minor. Next one, reverse transfer.
Yeah.
And also has removed the question from educational background, make it opt-in question under certification page. It already is under the certification page, isn't it?
No.
No, it's not. Okay.
It's in the education.
All right, so.
We're going to move it to the certification page.
This is the one that we talked about, the wording. We have a group that's going to look at the wording, and then the other piece of that, Tim, was to move it to the certification
Right.
page.
I'd say if we put those together, it would move it to a moderate from, I think I said lower moderate before. Each one of those separate is slightly above minor, but you're putting them together, I'd say it's a moderate size if you put them together. Those
Okay.
two things, moving it and adding the yes/no options.
Excellent. Okay, the next one is the veterans question. If you will get your handout that Jose distributed earlier, and this is the one that we mentioned earlier that Risa came in today. Oh, you gave me your handout.
No.
Yes. Well, and I have even more than that. The Risa came in today for this meeting in order to help us with this, and in a very quick previous early meeting before we started, she gave us some suggestions. If you'll look at your page, it has. Oh, and you redid it. That's right. Okay. It says current at the top. It's number 9, and it says current. The top question that's listed is the current question, the way it's listed now on the application.
Is this a freshman application?
This is freshman and transfer and 2-year.
Everybody.
It should be on all. Yeah, it should be on all. That's right. It should be on grad. I don't know. International, probably not. Maybe. I don't know if it's on international or not. So the current question, we had divided out actually by the different armed forces, National Guard, reserves. You see the descriptions there. We've had some discussion in the past, and what came back from the Veterans Association and RISA and then some of our institutions asked, instead of dividing it out by armed branch or services branch, that we're actually really looking more and need to know if they are a former member or veteran, if they are a current or active member of the military, spouse or dependent. Did you get anything back from Jane? Spouse or dependent, and then spouse or dependent of a deceased veteran. This morning, when Risa and I were talking, coming from her contacts, what we were looking at is on C to actually make it spouse or dependent of a veteran instead of just spouse or dependent. The information that is useful is spouse or dependent of a veteran. D would remain the same, spouse or dependent of a deceased veteran. And then E was also recommended to add an E, which is spouse or dependent of a veteran with a combat-related injury. The deceased veteran and the spouse or dependent of a veteran with a combat-related injury is waiver issues, opportunities for waivers. A question that we had for Jane was, does that waiver include the spouse and dependent or just the dependent?
It's both.
It is both.
Yes,
Okay,
it is
so we
both.
got clarification on
I did
that.
talk to her.
Great.
Yes.
So we'll leave spouse or dependent of deceased veteran, spouse or dependent of a veteran. Then want to make sure that we clarify on the former member or a veteran. Make sure that they know that's not active duty. We want to know, are you active duty or are you not active duty at this point? So that was an important clarification to have on here. Those were suggestions coming in to us from Veterans Affairs, and Risa was able to bring those and some discussion she had. Then during this meeting, we had another suggestion that was passed over to me. If you look at the new wording that we had put down, if you have any military affiliations and then listed U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, or Reserves, the word affiliation is a concern to, and Risa's saying yes as well.
Duty.
So, well, what was suggested, one of the suggestions is to clarify military/veteran status, and then you do the parentheses, Armed Forces, National Guard, Reserves. Please indicate by selecting all that apply. Also open to other suggestions if you don't like that, but it was to clarify military/veteran status, comma, or not comma, parentheses, U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, or Reserves. Then you would do please indicate.
Of any military/veteran status.
No, take off the whole.
Yeah, we would take off, if you have any military affiliations, would be crossed off. As you're looking at that, any military affiliations is crossed off. To replace that, it would say to clarify military/veteran status, and then the parentheses are the examples.
Oh.
Please indicate by selecting all that apply. And then also they added I am. Does that make sense to everyone?
Where does the I am go?
At the very end of the sentence before they start selecting.
Like an open
Clarify. Oh, comma.
Yeah, I am a former. I think it's former/veteran. Do you think that would work, Risa, for what they're trying to do? Okay. Active? Okay, gotcha. Just, we're trying, yeah, that, for that was definitions.
I have a question. Do we need to know if the veteran him or herself is a combat-related injury? Has a combat-related injury?
We do not know.
Okay.
Thank you.
That hasn't come up previously.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a waiver if they have a combat-related injury. Well, there wouldn't be a waiver for them because they have a lot. They have all the other.
They're already going to be current or former members.
Right, so
of
they would fall under those.
Well, and that's going to depend on what chapter they are when they come for
Right.
Veterans Affairs, if they're 30 or 35 or.
Right, so they would be covered in other ways.
They've got to cover that. Yeah.
Can you switch E and D? So it's like, I just
Combat
like to
related
see,
first and then
deceased. I like to see.
I'm sure we can.
levels. Yes, progressions.
You want me to read it off
No.
the way we have it, or are we set?
We're set.
Okay.
That's the lower moderate. It might turn out to be relatively minor. It's mostly text changes, but we are changing the values of
Yes.
some field of that field that we're sending.
Right.
So changing some values. So
Okay, excellent.
I got a question on C, spouse or dependent.
Of a veteran.
Does it make a difference whether they're spouse or dependent of active duty or of a veteran?
They added that.
Yeah, on C, it would be spouse or dependent of a veteran. Right.
Spouse or dependent.
Right. Okay. All right, so that's suggested change. The next one on here is take out emergency label on all fields under question 13.
Under the emergency.
Under the emergency contacts. So just, what would it say instead?
It would just have like emergency and then name, last name, instead of redoing the emergency.
They're just putting emergency.
It's just a text change?
in the question.
So it's not repeated.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was because it said emergency for everyone, emergency name, emergency
Right.
number, and
Right.
emergency, okay.
Just use it as the header.
It's just the header for that section. I remember that now. So that's it's actually removing the emergency every time when it's listed multiple times in a row there. So I think that would be minor. We're going to say everything's minor though.
wasn't against a lot of text on, and while I was driving, I could do that by the time I get back to my office.
But
Careful, Tim.
Sorry.
But we
You've set an expectation now.
Low billing.
and we
set that
know that he's not going to do that in the car. So
Of course, I'm not going
No.
to do that in
Now,
the
would
car.
that be in 5 o'clock traffic, 8 a.m. traffic, or would that be in sort of
The long red light would be okay.
1 p.m. traffic?
Long red light.
That next one's easy.
I do have a question about process, which if you don't mind my asking here. Sure. As we go forward and begin, and I talk with my team about some of these things, they're going to want to start working on the ones, especially some that are relatively easy to knock out. And would there be, is there a contact that I will go through, like if there's, I don't want them to make a change and then have it come back and say, well, this is not, if it hasn't really been settled, what's going to be done?
Right.
So are we waiting basically until the next meeting?
No.
Or are we just saying we're going to go ahead and if we have questions, then whom do we deal with regard to that?
This meeting is the go meeting.
Okay.
And I would say funnel them through Jose.
Okay.
Because then he can get them out to us quickly, or those of us that are working on a committee, especially if, let's say, for instance, the reverse transfer is selected and your team gets to a point that they're ready to work on reverse transfer and you haven't heard from that group. Jose will know who the group is and say they're ready, they need the wording now.
Okay.
So it keeps us on task. But yeah, this is the go meeting. So at the end of this meeting, you will know what your assignments are and you can start working on them.
Cool. Thank you.
And then when you have extra time, you can say, what else do you want?
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is also probably a minor change because it was replace the wording postal with postal/zip.
Right. Right. That's not any change in functionality. That's just a change in text. So that's minor.
Right. Family educational background, add a do not know option. So that would be adding a new option where students can say do not know.
Yeah. So we're back in a kind of moderate area where we've got to add something to the interface and the file and the EDI.
Okay.
That.
Same thing for family income. So that's also a moderate.
Right.
Adding that I do not know. Short mini-mester delete question. I remember that conversation we were discussing why we needed the short or mini-mester question. At least the advisory committee didn't have a concern with having it. Did anyone hear any concerns from anyone else? Or okay, so that's
still the term.
It's still the term, right? Mm-hmm. So that was that one. Mm-hmm. Which, how hard is it to delete something?
It's usually it's awfully easy to delete it. Sometimes we need to make sure that down the line there isn't something else in the system that was expecting an answer to there, like an audit or the EDI or something. So it's relatively minor though to delete a question.
The next one is a teacher certification question. This one was actually to update to the new level so that it's actually a correct verbiage. We want to correct the verbiage. We'll need to get the verbiage. I don't believe that I ever saw it actually listed out by anyone, so we still need that, but that's to correct the levels.
That's just text?
Yes.
Okay.
We just updated this, didn't we, for this current application?
We did, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I believe you were the one who brought it to the committee last year. So
I did?
I think Ethan owns that question, Becky.
Excellent.
Yes.
So
We did update
it last year.
This application. Has it changed since this last update?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
We got the new wording. It was actually in the PowerPoint, so we just need to verify with TEA to make sure that nothing has changed.
Excellent. Okay, so that's a text change, which is usually minor.
Right.
The next one, payment methods. This again was talking about changing the text. We wanted to combine check and money order, place fee exemption at the end with a note. And if I remember right, the note was talking about being eligible for a fee exemption. Does anyone remember that conversation? You don't use this. You don't have a fee. Wish I didn't have a fee.
Actually does, bless you.
And replace exemption with waiver.
You mean just those two words?
Yeah, that's the text. To change the word exemption with waiver. Combine check and money order into one, bless you, one choice. And then place fee exemption option at the end. It's the note that I don't remember. Does anyone remember who brought this up? Does anyone remember bringing this up?
Well, we have realized in the past that we had to actually, and we provided a link on the question, either here or as a dynamic question, to let students know that they had to actually complete our fee waiver form because too many students were choosing the I'm requesting a fee waiver option.
You never heard anything else.
And you never heard anything from them.
I think that was right.
I think Pam from UT Tyler was saying the same thing.
Redirect
because if they were in there and they weren't prepared to pay, so many were just asking for a waiver, and then they moved it to, you've got to provide financial base need.
So the note is actually explaining to the students that by selecting this, I mean, you're not explaining this part, but giving a note so they know just by selecting that they're not getting a waiver. They need to submit the appropriate form in order to request that waiver. Okay. So we still need wording on that, but that sounds like all additional are changes in wording.
Mostly text. That combining the check money order, I don't know whether, did they go to the same place before when they were separate? If they chose one over the other, did it take them to the same place? Then that's probably relatively minor because we're not combining two different functionalities into one new place. If that's the case, then that should be minor as well.
Okay. And I don't think it actually takes them anywhere. I think it's just
because then it just tells them where to send it, right?
Yeah.
It just says, I'm going to send a check, or I'm going to send a money order. And then that's just really a data collection, and then that gets sent.
And clear.
We really don't do anything until they actually pay the fee.
That's minor then.
If they pay the fee.
Yeah.
The next one is scholarship. There's two issues with scholarship that we want to consider. The first one is rewording biological parent, which is what it says now. We were going to reword it to something else.
Oh.
Was it legal guardian?
I think we said legal guardian because we had situations where we had, there were at least a couple of organizations or individuals who had said that wording was a little
offensive.
Offensive, yes.
Okay, so that's the first one, just a wording change, just to change biological parent to say legal guardian. The second one is the NCAA issue with the examples and the potential additional wording or change in wording to the paragraph at the top of that section. Again, we're looking at wording changes. Because it's in an example box, does that make any difference for you if we just change?
Shouldn't.
Okay, because it's still wording. The example box doesn't do anything but just give an example.
Right.
Okay, so that's wording change. We do not have this wording change, and if selected, I would assign this to a group to come up with the example. Ethan definitely wants to work on this one.
That description? Is it in biographical information?
No, it's in, it's way down in extracurricular and volunteer activities.
About the NCAA.
Okay. In the admissions app?
Yes. And then it copies from the admissions app to the scholarship app.
It's up on the screen.
Oh, you can actually, if you rotate it, roll it down a little bit, up above that even is some additional wording that we might be able to put in the phrase that Ethan used earlier. Because right now it says, please list in priority order the organizations, activities, jobs, and internships that indicate your special contributions, talents, honors, and abilities in the areas of extracurricular activities, services, and work. Service and work. And then the example you can see up there. We didn't even tell them about the example of the all-state basketball captain because we didn't want to get into that. But it's down under honors. Okay, so that's a suggested up for a vote here in a minute. We would assign someone to work on the example so that we could get those set up. New business, and I know, Jeff, you had some items you wanted to make sure. Okay, an item that you want to make sure we have under here.
I just have one. Pat, I'm going to ask your sort of guidance on this. We are having, our campus has a number of reciprocal exchange programs with international students. And many of them are enrolling at our campus but are not intending to get a degree. And I looked on the transfer application for international, and under the educational background, we only give the option for students to say, I am applying with a bachelor's degree or I'm seeking a second bachelor's degree. We don't give the option to say, I am applying as a non-degree seeker. And I think we need to add that just because I think it would, currently, we've got, and our numbers are going to grow, but we've got students who come in, they choose degree seeking, and then
through the course of our discussion and them realizing that these are part of our reciprocal exchange program, they're not intending to get a degree with us. They're here for just a semester or two. We want them to do ApplyTexas, and we're having to manually change all of them to non-degree seeking, and it's just kind of a bear.
We are having a similar, we have a similar issue, and in fact, we had a meeting with our Director of International Student Scholar Services last week to talk about this very thing. So I think that'd be great.
So really, it's question 1 on the current international transfer application. You are applying as an international transfer admission applicant. And then the 2 options we have currently are I have a bachelor's degree, I'm seeking a second bachelor's degree, and we're requesting to add I am applying as a non-degree seeker.
Could you also add that on the graduate application, or is it already there? Not just the international, but on the graduate?
On the graduate, it's already a pull-down box. The
It is
degree
a pull-down.
sought,
Okay.
is non-degree. See where we are, Jeff, again?
Jana, you had a great question. Do you have to be degree seeking for a visa? No, there are some exceptions to that, and there are some new visa types that are specifically allowed for those students who are on an exchange reciprocal program. We allow the students to come in for a semester or a year, in essence, and then we flag them after, and their enrollment is based on 1 term or 2 terms, and then we have a mechanism in our system to identify when that time hits so that our international office can say, are you staying? Are you going home? If you're going home, let's talk about extending your visa. If you're not, then recognize that you need to be going home and not staying here.
Right.
Okay, so that's a suggested change. I added on here too, just because it wasn't listed earlier, and so we don't forget the FAFSA and the TASFA changes that we discussed earlier from the subcommittee were also for potential change for the next cycle. So we want to make sure we consider those as well. Tim, I don't remember now if I asked you on the TASFA change, which would be much like the affidavit currently is, where students who are eligible to complete the TASFA would actually have that option to have their information pre-populate into the TASFA and direct them to that. What kind of change is that for you?
Well, that's going to take a little bit of research. I don't know what their API is. It's probably, it's possibly larger than the other things that have been asked for. Okay. But, most of that, a lot of the work going into that's going to be doing the research. I guess, what do you mean exactly by pre-populate? Do you mean just if what you're asking is on submission, we are provided an API from the federal government, and we send information about this student to them. That's one thing, because that's if that's what you're asking for, as long as we can talk to them and the API works, it will turn out to be, say, a moderate one, probably heavy on the research and maybe not that hard to do once we figure it out. What they do with that information then, is that, I don't know exactly whether that's part of the project. What if they've already got a FAFSA? If they don't have a FAFSA, what if what they give us is different from what they'd already put on their FAFSA? If they've already done one, is that our issue, or are we simply saying, hey, someone submitted to ApplyTexas, here's some information. If they don't have a FAFSA, then would you go ahead and create one for them? I guess is what you're asking them to do.
Yes.
And then they might have their own policies of what to do or we could suggest to them, would you update it with this information? Consider this an update if it's different from what you already have. So we need to do some research. You're not talking about, opening up a FAFSA and having them go immediately into FAFSA from our site and fill anything out. You're just saying, create a FAFSA app for them if they don't have one.
Yes, so that they only have to enter information one time.
And give them some information that we've got. Yeah, and of course we'd have to talk to them about not only how we do that, but who has to vet what the information is and that it's okay to give to them and stuff like that. That it's a secure link and all that, and that's probably already set up. If they've already got this and someone's using it. Then obviously we don't have to write it, and we just have to figure out how to use it, So I would put it at a moderate, but I would say, you know, it's one of the things that it could balloon into a little bit harder depending on how easy it is for us to use that API.
Okay. The TASFA piece is a little bit different than the FAFSA because it's a state of Texas, and from what I understand, it's only a paper document. So it's not going to be as difficult for us to probably manipulate because there's not as many guidelines to that document. When we looked at because it had to be two different ways of doing it, because FAFSA is going to take what you just said, the research, the API, the connectivity with the federal government. The TASFA, because it's a state of Texas and it really is only paper right now, we were thinking it might be able to work like the current affidavit for the Senate Bill 1528 students, where it links them over to that affidavit from our application and pre-populates that. So I don't know if that makes it easier or makes it the same. Or makes it worse.
Linking and pre-populating. Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same. We're okay. You know, and it might be more difficult if they don't have an API. You know, because we've got to figure out how to get them the information. If we can obviously pass them information. You know, through a link and through other means, we can pass them information. But they need to be able to consume it and do something with it. So, I would say this whole project is a pretty large one.
Right.
You know, I don't know if you want to break it out at any point, but if you look at the whole thing as one, it's a large project.
As we're looking at it now, let's say that we would like to propose that we start on this project and move forward with one or the other, because I don't know if you can do both at the same time anyway. Which one do you think would be the easier of the two, or no way to tell right now?
No way to tell right now. Yeah, I'd have to. It looks like FAFSA's already set up for this. I would probably research that first and see whether we could relatively easily use their API and get them the information that they want. But I think making a proposal that we do the research on it and begin moving forward with it and see how big a project it's going to be is a reasonable, I think, request for this time.
Okay.
And I had commented yesterday in our meeting that different institutions require different. They would want, some institutions will just take a worksheet and then ask them to provide documents. Some of the institutions ask them to do a preview at UTB-TSC, and then they decided they do a TASFA. So it'll kind of sort of make it standard. I think it'll be a good thing because the kids are like, for over here I have to do this and I have to do something different. So be a good thing.
Thank you, Pilar. Okay, anyone else think of something that was not on this list that we need to make sure is brought up at this point before we go through the selection process? I'm not recalling anything else. Okay. Then not recalling anything else, this is our slate for this year's considerations for changes. Now, because I'm the eternal optimistic, Tim, can we do them all?
Maybe.
A lot of them are text changes, is why I asked.
The text changes, yeah, I think we take the text. What I would like from y'all is, because we also have projects from the coordinating board that we have to work into our time, that what I'd like is let's take the text changes out and assume they'll all be done.
Okay.
And then we're left with, and then what are we left with? And all I would like would be some sense of, well, you know, this one we have to do because it's legislatively mandated or whatever, and this one, it'd be really great, but if it really got kicked down the road a year, it wouldn't kill anybody. And that way, our goal would be to get them all done. And at this point, I am optimistic that we can do them all. But there are some other projects kind of still in the works too. So we're looking at the SSN. Field restrictions, that's relatively minor. I don't see why we can't do that. But I guess what my question to you would be, if it became a problem, is that a problem not doing that one for this time? How important
let's
is
do
that?
this, Tim. Go through the list with us again and tell us which ones you think are the larger ones that we need to consider. And then that way that'll help us in telling you, yes, this is one we want to, or no, something else ranks higher.
All right. I'm gonna exclude text changes.
Yes.
Okay, so looking at from the first part of the list, the additional changes, we've got this field restrictions, that's a minor one, so that one shouldn't be a big deal.
Okay.
Listing more than one high school on the international app, that's a moderate one because it does involve some file changes, changes to a file and changes to the EDI and changes to the interface and changes to what's on the file.
Okay.
That's not a minor one, but not,
Not major, real big.
not major, real big. Let's see, I put something, adding the extracurricular modules, I think that's easy.
Okay.
The self-identified interests is probably another moderate one in that it's a new question with some possible multiple choices, which will involve, again, file changes, EDI changes. So those two so far are non-minor.
Well, and don't forget the attaching supporting documents to
right.
Because that was the major real big one.
We're going to begin doing research on that, yeah, and I would call that a moderate one, too, to do the research on that.
Moderate, not the project.
Right, yeah, the research itself is a moderate project.
Okay.
Let's see, deleting the word is not hard. I think that's all on the front page that I had. And then on the back page,
the reverse transfer you had mentioned was moderate. And veterans.
The reverse transfer, because it's got two parts, is moderate, and the veterans is moderate. The two add do not know options are moderate.
Okay, right.
That's it, I believe. Everything else is minor.
What about
Then the FAFSA TASFA piece.
Right, the FAFSA TASFA piece, I would say, is large.
Large.
What about the non-degree
large?
So maybe that needs to be the research first before, as a prioritization prior to implementation.
That's what I was going to say. I think that the TASFA is going to need a little bit more research.
Yeah.
At this point.
Right. It's a moderate project as a research project.
Yeah.
If we're not
Now,
looking at doing it.
the TASFA, it could be that we can just put the PDF out there for right now and then do a fillable later so that we can reduce the workload on that item.
But again, with
right now,
with the PDF link would only be visible to those students who are eligible for that. Yeah, that's just a really important piece.
So it would be minimizing the scope of the project by just putting the PDF out there for those students.
We wanted the TASFA to be like the affidavit. The affidavit is only visible to students who are eligible for that affidavit. The TASFA would need to be the same, so we don't have a large number of students filling out TASFA who really shouldn't be filling it out.
So you'd add a link, essentially.
Not a link, the document itself is an attachment.
So who fills out the TASFA form? How do we know who to restrict it to?
Undocumented students.
Be the same logic as who sees the affidavit.
Affidavit, exactly.
So you give them a second PDF to fill out.
Okay, it would be just another page that would go to in the application.
Yes.
To fill out.
Specific group.
Okay.
But the piece I want to make sure you heard was only the students who are undocumented students would actually have that pop up to even see that option.
And do they just fill that and print it? Is that what they do?
To change the scope to make sure that it gets on this cycle.
Yeah,
we can just put the form out there, unfill it, and then maybe fill it out later.
Yeah, I'd say that's lower moderate because you're conditionally adding a page, but then when they get to the page, it's either a fillable online and print it out, or they print it out and write into it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all would provide the PDF.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Pat had something that I don't think I had in my list, because you've got it written in. Oh, okay. I don't think I wrote that down. Could you restate that?
So, Jeff, you wanted to see about the possibility of adding non-degree seeker to international transfer?
Yes. Okay. And that would be a new, not a new field, but a new option, right? I mean, not a new question, but a new option?
New option.
That would be moderate.
So here's the current international transfer.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
we want to add this option.
I think all of them.
Yeah, that's another lower moderate, I guess, because it's adding another value to a field. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The form already comes with instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have the same instructions. Yeah.
That's a good question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, we'd make sure there was. The change that Jeff just gave you, Tim, minor, moderate.
Lower moderate, I'd say. It's along with those others where you add an option to something.
So we still need to consider that one. So,
Becky, I just got an email with some suggested changes to our veteran question that we just talked about.
yeah.
And I just want to run it by folks so that I can say I've done my part to ask. And it's not anything but just separating it out. I think the current question that we had sort of just passed and said, yeah, let's do, we identified, and I may be off base here because I know we've edited this thing since it was printed here. We sort of listed Armed Forces, National Guard, and Reserves in the question.
Yes.
And one of the requests is to possibly look at adding that as an option for them to check on as a box. In essence, to now it would say, instead of saying I'm a former member, it would say current/former member of the U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, Reserves.
I think we went back and forth.
That's what we're trying not to do.
Yeah.
That is your shoebox.
Because do you really need it? Because I'm not sure you need to know it, because it doesn't matter which branch you were in, your eligibility is based on your service.
We were trying to minimize the options.
And I think it was listed, came from a Veteran Service Advisor Committee on a campus, not mine, but from another one. And I think they're asking this question so that they can then report how many Armed Forces, National Guard, Reserves folks they have on their campus.
Broken out by specific group.
Yeah.
That's tracking. That's individual tracking per institution.
Right.
That's
And so
more of a,
the question, though, would require institutions then to go one step further and ask for the tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And if we captured on ApplyTexas, we wouldn't need institutions to have to do that.
So, but do you realize how long that would make that question? Because it would be, are you a former member of the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a former member of the National Guard? Are you a former member of the Reserves? Are you a current member of the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a current member?
No. It says military veteran status. Option 1, current/former member of the U.S. Armed Forces.
We're
Option 2.
trying to divide out current and former.
Okay. So then
What Veterans Affairs had asked us to do is to have
current and former. Yeah, then you would have to basically separate that. So you would have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 options then.
15 options.
But even in your own internal system, it doesn't matter which.
It doesn't matter right now, but I think veterans has become such a big issue. We are being asked to report how many current veterans how many current members of the U.S. Armed Forces do you have? How many former? How many current National Guard members? How many former? How many all the way down? And this was just an opportunity to then allow institutions to be able to use this, what they're gathering from ApplyTexas, as their method to track that.
Couldn't you make a separate question that goes,
Can make it
what
dynamic.
branch are you in? 1, 2, 3, and then the second question, what
'Cause the
what
first
were you
question's
in?
gonna
We'll
answer-
dynamically. I mean, dynamic.
I don't think ApplyTexas can work that.
It's two questions. I see what you're saying. It's two questions. The first one is
What
if
are
you're if you were a military member, which branch, and they select which branch. And then the second one is this: are you a former member, a current member, or maybe it's that you start with this one, and then you at the next question number
Answer
10.
number 9.
Yeah, number 10 would be what branch of the military. You know,
We went around this tree a couple of times with our Veterans Affairs at our school. And basically what it is, there's additional information besides this that they must collect and report on too. And we came to the agreement that in admissions, we admit them to the school. And we will ask a question that if they get an answer, then that gives them the opportunity to identify a potential person they need to follow up with and get the rest of that information. And I think that's where we need to focus on this, or we're going to get back to what it used to be, where we collected information for every other.
Right, and I understand that, but I can tell you this has become, there are two issues that the legislature is picking up on this year: academic advising and veterans. And I know we're all going to be asked the question too, and what we found is often, unless a student is trying to utilize any of their benefits, we don't have a full picture of how many veterans there are on our campuses, which is why a couple campuses have been trying to use this at the point of application here, because it could be that students are unaware of their veteran benefits, and this would be a way to at least track those students and then let them know of them.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I completely agree with you, but I think with the way that we've drafted it out there to say former member or current member, they're either a veteran, they're not a veteran, or they're either active duty or they're not. And from just that question alone, or if you're a dependent or a spouse, then just putting that in our database will give our Veterans Affairs Office the reference point to go out and then contact those students, and then from there determine what other information they need without us trying to figure out how else we can help them and get as granular as we can. I think we need to just stay very simple with either you're active or you're a veteran or you're a spouse or a dependent, and leave it at that, and then they can drill down ever how they want to there. And I think at the admissions office, we've satisfied the legislative requirement to do that.
I think it goes back to, we had this discussion probably 2 years ago. Is it an admission question or a post-admission question? And I think we beat that to death, but that's one of the things Daryl's saying. If you just gathered this, you could still run a database of the number of enrolled or accepted.
And I get that, but I just want to keep in mind who will be asking for this information. I mean, we went through this a couple years ago with reverse transfer when this group said we don't need the question. And then we quickly had to put the question back in because our university presidents, chancellors, and the legislature wanted the question there. So I just want to make sure that, and I'm fine with it that way, but I want to make sure that everyone's aware that this more than likely will be a bigger issue in the next session.
Yes, I'm hesitant only because Risa came in today, and I'm sad that she had to leave. Risa came in today with suggestions that she had gotten from the state counterparts, and they suggested not breaking it down by armed forces and National Guard and Reserve. So now I'm torn because their recommendation was that didn't matter at this point. We need the active, veteran, and dependent information.
Additionally, I work close with our veterans office, and being a veteran myself and going through a lot of this paperwork, there is nothing that our school is going to report that's based on these questions here. The school is only going to report information that is backed up by documentation.
That's right.
So somebody can say, I'm a veteran, but if they don't come in and they bring that ID card or they bring DD 214 or something, the school is not going to report it. So I think the role of the admissions application is just to identify possible applicants that we need to have another office within the institution go out and do that research and contact with.
I agree, Daryl, and I think that though I respect very much what Jeff's trying to do in preparation for upcoming implications of legislature and reporting, we have to be conservative in the fact that we don't know what that's going to look like quite yet. And so I support what you're saying, Daryl.
Maybe so.
Okay. Are you, Jeff, okay with telling them that we discussed the issue but as for right now, we're not doing the division?
Yeah. I mean, because I think the most important thing is the big issues we've covered with specifically the spouse question and then the combat-related injury. I think those are the two big things. And, at this point, institutions will capture that data and then survey or not survey as they need to.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Tim, based on the number of moderate suggestions that we still had, removing the text suggestions, moving the FAFSA, TASFA big project to research, but trying to move forward with the TASFA PDF linkage that would mirror the affidavit. Also knowing that you mentioned that we need to move the supporting documents to research for this year, which I'm thinking when you say research, that means chances of getting it implemented is slim. Research would occur this year and implementation in the future.
Try to solve the see how we would solve the technical issues this time.
Okay, so research the documents, attaching documents, research the FAFSA, TASFA API issues. We're suggesting that TASFA be considered a link, a PDF link, however, in this cycle.
Right.
Without the filling in of additional information, just to give them that link. Okay, with those changes in mind, do we need to select from, or do we just need to prioritize for you those moderate ones?
Prioritizing would be fine. I guess my question would be, are there any of those that we absolutely have to get done no matter what because they're legislatively mandated or some such?
The veterans question and the reverse transfer question are ones that need to be done, that definitely need to be done.
Okay.
And I think that definitely need to be done. We need to go back to that top 10% on transfer because that's a legislative mandate. I think it's on the back of page 2. And I have a feeling we are in compliance, we just need to change the language, or we're not, and we need to sort of rethink what that looks like.
It's a will be done already.
The minors are all going to be done.
All the text changes are already approved that will be done.
I just don't know if that's merely a text change or not. So that's why I made the suggestion that we may need to go look back at the legislation to make sure that it's not just a text change, and that our intent in the question is, and we're actually asking what we feel we need to in the legislation.
But it's still text, right? You're not asking for a new question or...
Just wording.
It's just wording, right?
No.
As of right now, without looking at the piece of legislation, I don't want to say yes before looking at that to determine if we feel that it's a text change need or not.
We've assigned this one to Jeff.
I appreciate that though, because it would change it would change it for us if it turns out you have to ask something else that they have to answer.
And I'm not trying to be a pest. I just want to make sure that we don't get dinged by the legislature by either the intent or not intent or misintent with what we're asking for on the question.
All right. I was trying to get an idea of what else it might turn into.
I want those.
Yeah.
Several of those.
Then I'm hearing, because I'm sitting over here, I'm hearing from this side of the table that the SSN field that begins with a 9, that's an important one to many people, and that the family education background and family income addition of a do not know are important. Any comments on those? What about the question on the AVID question? The AVID, et cetera question?
I would put it higher than the other ones.
Higher than which other ones?
Like high school on international, or more than one high school on international, and the next one for international.
But what would international think about that? I'm just saying.
It's still, it's not going, is it really going to hinder the admission decision?
None of those do for me. I mean, the AVID question doesn't hinder an admissions decision at all. It's another one of those where it's
data collection.
It's data collection.
But I think for TEA, though, that's the best place to capture it, because in the future, I think we're going to have to track it.
Well, I agree with you, and I like to have I like the idea of a new question on there, but I'm saying, do we move that in front of international and what they're asking for? Because international is looking at more than one high school and extracurricular activities, which
is going
hopefully the extracurricular activities, Tim thought would be minor because it's just opening that module for them.
Right.
I would also say that there may be more students who are affected by a question about Avid Trio, Gear Up, et cetera, than there will be by international, more than one high school.
That's true, too. So that we're down, those are our last two. Well, also, we didn't talk about the second bachelor non-degree seeker, the non-degree seeker part. That also was up for still suggestion and where it would rank in this.
I also wanted to ask, last meeting I had brought up students that are on the Accelerated Early College High School program, but I'm not sure if it's significant enough to make it an application type.
That was part of the dual credit application subcommittee that hasn't met.
Yeah, that's part of that.
That one would,
At the top.
with that one, it still needs more research. But that was part of it. We wanted the subcommittee to work on that to see what options were available. I don't know that, well, at this point, we don't know if it should be another application type, if it should just be a question. There hasn't been a lot of work on that one yet. I do think it needs to be looked at because that group is really changing.
Okay.
39 high schools.
And more coming every day. And they send 5,000 graduates in the next 2 years, I think. So it definitely needs to be considered. So that needs to be a dual credit early college high school. So we'd ask that committee definitely look at both of those topics. But at this point, it looks like it'd be for one cycle out at the earliest.
Thank you.
But don't let it drop, yeah. Don't let it drop. So if we're back to, we're trying to juggle the new Avid Trio, et cetera question, the international changes for more than one high school, extracurricular activities module, and the non-degree seeker.
The more than one high school on the international app, I thought we were going to go try to look at that from a different angle.
Well, we were just talking, right? And it's really more, the problem is
probably more geared to the domestic app.
Domestic app.
Yeah, I think it's a domestic app. But are we going to do a little bit more research on the question?
Yes, right. To see the volume.
So we can take off the
two high schools?
Yeah.
Is now moved to a research category.
Yes.
Okay. So we said, hopefully the extracurricular module is actually minor. Now you're down to Avid question or non-degree seeker question in order of rank. Because these are our last two.
I would think Avid would be first and then, yeah.
Okay, so in our rank order then, we said that reverse transfer and veteran question are our most important out of this moderate and above category.
Okay.
No, I don't care. Those two, we didn't put TASFA in there with the link to PDF. Where is that gonna fall?
I would think that that's minor. I don't think that that's going to be a moderate question, so.
You're talking about the PDF?
Yeah,
PDF
just
link.
putting a PDF out there.
What did you say, Jose? I missed.
Oh, is it a moderate change or is it actually a minor change? And do we need to try to prioritize it for you? Is what we're trying
I don't think you need to prioritize it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a minor.
All right, so that one's just okay. Okay, so reverse transfer and veteran question are our most wanted changes. Then we have the Social Security number, field restrictions, family education background change, and the family income wording change are the next in our set. Then we added the Avid question, the extracurricular activities module, and the non-degree seeking module. That's our list of priorities.
Okay.
We moved the list more than one high school and the international application to research. We changed the ability to attach supporting documents to research. and the FAFSA, TASFA API to research.
Right.
Everything else was considered a minor or a text change, and Tim's going to start those not on his drive back to campus.
Right. Darn it.
Does that help you?
Yeah, a lot.
And then that will be our priorities for this year and the changes we'll be looking at for the next cycle. And the other thing I'm really pleased about is that we have some research starting on some big items that people really have wanted. And so that's going to help us move those forward in the next couple of cycles. I hope. I will be rotating off the committee, so I won't be there to see it, but I have faith that you guys will move it forward, those of you that are still here. Any other new business not related to this, because I use the new business to pull in changes. Any other new business we need to mention before we officially adjourn? This is your last chance, and I'm only 16 minutes behind noon.
I hate to be the pest, but I will. I have 14 minutes to talk, and I won't take all of it. I know that at our last meeting we had talked about, and Becky, it looks like TACRO will be taking over the responsibility for the ApplyTexas Users Conference. And I'm just concerned about location and day and time and all of that because spaces fill up. And do we have any, and I know we had talked about the possibility of a group of us maybe getting together via email, phone, whatever, and maybe talking about that. I just don't want to get too far down the road and there be nothing for us to choose from. I know that the Speedy conference, the dates are already chosen, I think.
No, they've already set their dates.
So I just want to make sure that we don't sleep between now and then.
I did go to the executive committee of TACRO, and after the last meeting, and told them that the decision was that the courting board was going to allow TACRO to take over the coordination of that event. The executive board was very supportive. So they want us to move forward with that. I need to next, and I have not done this yet, I need to talk to the technology committee next. And I know Joe Papari from SMU is the chair. So I will reach out to him probably this afternoon via email and make sure that they know. We also had Joe and Jamie in the town hall meeting where this was broached at TACRO, and both of them were very supportive in technology helping us with this. Executive board did say that they are looking at or will consider expanding the technology committee to include an ApplyTexas group as part of that committee for us to be able to work in the future for the workshop or anything else we need to have on the TACRO side for ApplyTexas. So that committee will be expanding and we'll be absorbing ApplyTexas into that committee. And you never contacted Pickle Center to do any kind of... No. Okay, so we need to do that.
I agree with Jeff, because if we can go back and use the Pickle Center, we don't have to reserve hotel-specific block of rooms and their activity rooms and pay that extra cost. And then Becky and I talked, we can use TACRO's website to do the online registration. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then we also discussed that since we want to do it, we can send additional staff to the Pickle Center or wherever we have it for the registration and check-in, and then we will just have to look at the cost and the scheduling the meals.
Right.
If we can get the Pickle Center is probably the big thing right now.
We will need, and what we've normally done, and we still have a meeting on the schedule that we could use to plan. We do have to talk about the breakout in sessions. So we had a tentative meeting scheduled in the spring for the opportunity for us to get together to look at the scheduling, or not the scheduling, but the sessions we'd want to cover for that day and make sure we have speakers for those sessions or leaders for those sessions. So I'd like to ask that all of you keep that on your calendar because we will still need to be able to do that planning at some point. And at least for this year, it'll be easier to keep that meeting scheduled since we already had it on the schedule. Keep that meeting so that we can make sure we have everything done. In the future, we might change that to coincide with TACRO or something like that. But at least for this year, let's make sure we keep that date blocked off. It was probably in April. I don't remember where in April. I have April 27th. That was the meeting. Wasn't that the tentative meeting?
That's the final meeting to approve the schedule.
April 27th, I believe, was the day that we had said that would be our workshop.
Yeah, we have another one on February the 10th?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need January.
On the 10th, do we still want to meet? Or can we do the final meeting in April? Can we go over changes, updates from UT and the
We may
and the
want to
committee?
use that date in February for some of our subcommittees.
And the other thing I could see with the February date is any issues with research that you've started, because you may need something back from us that would give us a chance to meet, listen to the research, and then come back with things you need by the April meeting.
What date?
So do we want to do like the
I think we keep the February 10th as well.
February 10th and do subcommittee meetings in the morning?
Yeah, I think we can
Or
start with
just-
that. Jose, is it possible to get maybe, I know we have this room for this meeting, but is it possible to get maybe,
A couple of rooms?
or maybe we could even, I hate using this big room for that,
Has more tables.
for some of the committee meetings, just so we can actually, because I have a feeling this is the best time when we can all meet, especially in the subcommittee since we're all here.
And we blocked it off previously.
Yeah, we can.
So subcommittees, do we want the entire committee to get together though for research? I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, research report from Tim. He may need at that point things
Yeah.
for us to schedule out for us to do and get back to him. So if everyone could plan to be here, Tim, I guess it would help us if you're not on a subcommittee that's meeting that day, and I don't know, is anyone in here not on a subcommittee? Because if you aren't, we can assign you to one. Okay, we're assigning Mary to one. Ethan, which one were you on by yourself?
I believe that was student correspondence.
Student correspondence.
I'm going to send like a list of all the committees with the current members.
That would be great.
We can tell who's not
I think Pam's on that one also.
assigned to a subcommittee.
That's great. And Mary, we will get you an assignment. So we could have, Tim, if you could come in first that morning and let us know an update on the research and then what you need us to do to help. And then we could break into subcommittees.
What time are we talking about?
9 o'clock.
Okay.
I think if we do the 9, and we could probably just say 9 to 12, don't you think? So the February 10th meeting will be 9 to 12.
In the interest of full disclosure, I was planning on being out of town that day, but if that's the date, I can either look at my plans and change them, or send someone from my team who would be able to speak for the team. What you're looking for is a report on the research that's been done.
Yes.
Right.
And then specifically, if there's anything they need us to do to
Yeah.
assist.
Yeah.
An update on the items.
Where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very good.
Here on that day, but Jeff will be here in my place. Is that okay?
Excellent.
And
Yes,
I
that's
think
great.
he's on some committees anyways.
That's great, Fleur. Thank you very much. Okay.
Can I ask for clarification of those 2 dates, February 10th and then April, which?
27th.
Okay.
I'm sending somebody who knows more than I do.
And I believe on the April 27th meeting as well, just to go ahead and,
That's conference planning.
that's conference planning.
Nail down speakers.
It'll be conference planning, nail down speakers. We'll volunteer for the different pieces, make sure we have our ducks in a row, because from there we'll go and print the agenda, which has always just been basically a handout. But I was thinking time-wise, if we can do noon, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be wrapped up by 12. I really don't. So noon to 12, since I was able even to move us through noon to 12.
Noon to
Yes,
12 is
we're going to
short.
meet really quick. 9 to 12, 9 to noon.
And what are the other meetings? Just so I know, is there one in January?
That's it for this year. There's not one in
There's not one in
January,
January.
and there's not one
And the one
in.
in the February is earlier because of some reason? Is it just, it just was set? It's usually later in the month, right?
It just depends.
Okay. So we've got one on the 10th of February and one on the 27th of April?
April.
Okay.
It had to do with this room availability and our availability, and
Yeah. Okay.
there's really no rhyme or reason to why we pick a date, except that we sit around and go, that sounds good. Like this one. Okay, any other new business? We'll also have an update at the, we can do a quick update in the February meeting of where we are with scheduling the ApplyTexas workshop, just so everyone knows. I'll have more information by then. All right, if there's no new business, then I say we are adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone. No?
Do an official adjournment.
We're adjourned.
Oh, no, that's it.
I said-
Didn't have to close it. He said-
I move we adjourn.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Didn't think so. Happy holidays, everyone.
Isn't that what he officially told us?